Can't believe he's done it. The conference room Clash champion, Pat Chowder, being lifted into the air by a cow with human teeth.
Oh my gosh, that's the game.
What a game.
And Zero Skater is our new champ.
Oh my goodness. He was not expecting to survive that attack.
And that is it. Chad is the winner of Summer of Legends. Hello and welcome everybody to the finals weekend for the Summer of Legends 2023 tournament. So we started off this tournament with 112 of the greatest players in Unmatched in the world. It's definitely a global community, and we are down to the top 4. So my name is John, otherwise known as Zero Skater 12, and I am joined by a wonderful commentary crew. First of all, we have Angel Cake, or Angel. How you doing, Angel?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me this morning. And then next up we have Mitosis, or Alex. Alex, how you doing today? I think we had you muted.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Doing fantastic. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for joining in. And then I'm sure you guys recognize a familiar face here with PoindexterG, or Jeremy. How you doing today, Jeremy?
Hey, I am doing great. I'm excited to see how some of these new fighters end up shaking things up here this year.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of new fighters since the previous tournament, seeing as we have added the Marvel Teen Spirit, King and Country, and Brains and Brawn sets to the mix. So that's quite a few new fighters to deal with, and it definitely shakes up the meta quite a bit. So also with this tournament, we are running a new format called Ban Quest. Now, name was created by Sidious256, so shout outs to you, Mike. But it's a fun new format. It's very similar to the old Conquest format that we've used in the past in the first couple of tournaments. So what the players are going to do is they are going to back and forth ban out some fighters before they even start the picks. So they're going to determine a leader and a follower. It's going to begin with leader and then go follower and alternate back and forth. Each player will ban 3 fighters. So that's going to be 6 fighters banned out of the overall pool before they even begin the drafting. Once that is done, it's going to alternate in a snake draft format between leader and follower for picking their fighters. And they're each going to end up with 4 fighters on either side. Then what they're going to do is they are going to secretly ban one of the opponent's fighters that will not be able to be chosen for the match. And then after that, they're going to be left with 3 each, and they are going to self-ban one of their own fighters secretly. And what that's going to do is leave you with 2 fighters on either side, and they play a best-of-3 match. And the first to win with both of their fighters will be the winner of the match. So very similar to Conquest, but a few extra steps in there with some extra bans, and it definitely makes it a little bit more of a balanced format. So the previous tournament, we ran the Arsenal format, which is a little bit more randomness involved in the drafting phase. BanQuest is a little bit more under the player control. And what we really wanted to do is just kind of cater to both sides of the community, those who like more random and those who like more control. So I think it's been a big success so far, but we're going to see what happens with this match. It's going to be very interesting. Now, do any of you guys, were any of you in a pool at all with any of these players?
Not these players particularly, but I do have to say about BanQuest is, as someone who originally was admittedly opposed to it, it's definitely changed my mind as time has passed, and I've given it more time to kind of grow within the competitive scene. And I have to say that the BanQuest format is, like you said, that perfect balance between the fear of too much randomization and the ability for players to strategically come up with a draft that they are simultaneously comfortable with and one that they can perform well with as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it, and great points you make too about, that perfect balance. That's what we were going for, is the balance between the randomness and the control, because in Arsenal sometimes people wouldn't be able to play the fighters that they really wanted because either the opponent picked them at the same time and they were banned out in the mirror ban, or maybe you'd kind of be in a bad position and be forced to pick something you didn't really want to play but then got stuck with. So it's been a fun experiment with the new format for sure. But I mentioned the pools stage. So the overall tournament structure that we had is that we started off with 112 players. We split them into 16 pools of 7 players each. And then you would play against each opponent in your pool in 2 games, and you would get a point for every game that you won. And then the top 3 point earners would move on to the bracket phase, which was a single elimination bracket. Now, if you made it out of your pool in first place, you got a little bit of an advantage because you went straight to the top 32 section of the bracket. If you were second or third, then you went into the preliminary bracket, where you would face somebody else who also got second or third in their pool, and you'd go from there. So you're fighting for your spot in the top 32 bracket if you made the top 2 or 3. So I think that's been a welcome addition to the format, seeing as more players have been able to make it out of pools and into the bracket phase. And it really does have a different feel in bracket because your life's on the line, right? It's one and done. That's it. If you lose, you're out. So there's a lot more pressure involved rather than in pools. So it's a different feel to the gameplay. And also, it's best of 3 versus the pool stage, which is a best of 2. And that dynamic does shift up the drafting phase strategy a little bit. So, Alex, I know you yourself, made it out of pools for the first time, I believe, into bracket. Was that right?
Yeah, so I made it all the way to top 60 in this tournament.
Very impressive. And how did you feel about, having the top 3 advance versus just the top 2?
Well, actually, in Winter of Champions, if we had top 3, I would have advanced. And this tournament, I was third in my pool to advance. So obviously, I'm in favor of top 3 advancing. But even just beyond myself, I think it's so much better because you just get more people involved. You have, honestly, that's the strength of this community. We have so many great players, and it would be a real shame to just cut it down to 2 per pool when there's so much talent out there.
There really is. That's a great point. The community just keeps growing, and we get more and more talented players involved, and it's really great to see. So I'm very curious to see where the tournament scene will go moving forward. But anyways, let's focus on what we got going on right now. So we have PhantomX versus mplaza. Now, Phantom is the only remaining non-US player in the top 4, so he is fighting for Europe, I believe he's from. And so I'm sure he's got a lot of supporters out there overseas. And then mplaza is from the US, and he is a bit of an underdog, I believe. I don't know if you guys have talked to him much or played with him, but I personally have not. And as far as I can tell, he is relatively new to the tournament scene. So that's always really cool to see, kind of a dark horse, in the finals. That's always really cool. So it's going to be an interesting match for sure. But Jeremy, do you have any maybe expectations of what kind of fighters we're going to see picked here?
Well, looking at mplaza, he has a few that he seems to really be fond of. Looking at the umleague.net statistics, we have T-Rex is quite a common one for him, as is Yananga and Houdini. Those seem to be the largest ones out of his. When we look at PhantomX, he has a lot more of kind of a generalist. Now, I think he's involved in a lot of different things that tend to make him get a lot of them. His most number of plays that he has is actually logged with Sherlock Holmes, which is interesting because in a lot of these events, you tend a lot of times to see Sherlock not make it into play because he tends to get banned out quite a bit. And after Sherlock, it is just a big mix of everybody. So Phantom is really set up to be able to play a lot of different fighters, which is definitely an advantage going into a format like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree, but I would also say that in BanQuest, the specialists do get to come out a little bit more because they can make sure they get those fighters, although then the problem is if the opponent knows that, then they're likely to ban them out and not let you play them. So it can be pretty interesting in the draft phase. But it looks like we do have the fighter picks, so let's go ahead and pull those up and see who was on each side and maybe try and deduce what we expect to see banned. So right off the bat, I'm seeing Jeremy, as you mentioned, mplaza with Yananga and Houdini. There you go. That must be comfort picks for him. But we don't see the T-Rex. I wonder if it got banned out or not. And then PhantomX, I know he is a big Luke Cage player. Personally, I've played against his Luke Cage, and it's very deadly. So I'm not surprised to see the Luke Cage on Phantom's side. And we have seen him play a good amount of Winter Soldier before as well in the other stages of the bracket. So that's not too much of a surprise. But Angel, overall, is there anything else like that really stands out to you about these picks?
There are two things that stand out, one on each side. For starters, PhantomX taking Winter Soldier, as you mentioned, is very interesting. I believe that Winter Soldier is one of the newer fighters in the format, and it's interesting because Winter Soldier is kind of a strange fighter because he's able to not only, flee and be able to keep his deck going with cards that allow him to restock his discard pile, but he also has some options to be able to go a bit offensive with so many high-valued attack cards. On mplaza's side, I think the fighter that stands out to me the most is one of the newest fighters in Unmatched, which would be She-Hulk. She-Hulk has been seeing quite a bit of play in Summer of Legends and some past tournaments, such as Summer of Stragglers as well, that has been going as a side event. And She-Hulk has definitely shown that she is a prominent fighter and a fighter to look out for. So I'm very curious to see how mplaza will use her kit.
Definitely. Alex, I know you have a bit of an affinity for She-Hulk, huh? What do you think about that pick?
I love that character. She is an absolute menace. I remember when she was first revealed, myself and a lot of other people were worried that she would have a little bit of spike-itis, but after playing as and against her, that character is an absolute monster in fatigue. And when you're forced to approach her, because you very often are, that's when her kit really gets to shine, with a couple of extremely impactful, high-value cards and low water.
Yeah, and I'm definitely one of those people who was in that group who, thought, oh, she's just going to have too much of a problem. People just run away the whole game. And it turns out in practice that doesn't work that way. So she's definitely a very devastating new fighter. So I'm a little bit surprised to see her make it through. But Alex, do you think She-Hulk's going to take the ban from Phantom, or what do you think that we're going to see for bans?
I actually think that mplaza is going to self-ban the She-Hulk. Looking at Phantom's lineup, you have Moon Knight and Luke Cage, who I think are some of her toughest matchups at the moment, and Bigfoot, who she can absolutely beat, but I found that matchup to be closer to even than winning. So right now, I'm not a big fan of the She-Hulk's chances. Of course, she can always win, just because she's that kind of fighter. But if I had to bet, I would bet on Moon Knight and Luke Cage bringing her down.
Okay, so if that's the case, what do you think Phantom might be looking to ban?
Probably that Houdini, looking at mplaza's lineup, because Houdini destroys Winter Soldier, does pretty well into Luke, and Moon Knight matchup, I've been told it's even. After playing it a bunch, I think it's ever so slightly Houdini favor, just because he's got that explosiveness and can really capitalize on Moon Knight's lack of draw power. Yeah, you got Bigfoot, but if you're mplaza, you're banning Bigfoot 100% of the time.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Although I do think that probably all except Houdini have a decent shot against the Bigfoot. But Bigfoot is just, he's one of the big three from the old days, and he's just such a solid fighter and very versatile all around. So none of the matchups against Bigfoot are usually easy, unless maybe you're Wukong or Muldoon. But we don't see any of those for Phantom to worry about. So let's go ahead and see what the bans turned out to be here, because I believe they have those. So, all right. So Moon Knight and Luke are banned out from Phantom, and then Houdini and She-Hulk banned out from mplaza. So I know one of those is the opponent ban, and one of them is the self ban. So the outside ones are the self ban, I was informed. So Moon Knight and She-Hulk were self banned. So you were right, Alex. She-Hulk is out of there. And I'm surprised to see the Moon Knight self-ban from Phantom, because Moon Knight has just been such a versatile and very popular fighter throughout the tournament. Jeremy, what do you think about the bans here? About, Luke Cage being banned out from Phantom, I feel like is a big one.
Yeah, that's an interesting there because Luke Cage, he's generally pretty good into a lot of those there. Achilles, and so Yanenga is good generally into a lot of those there, but still interesting to see some of those. The Moon Knight one, particularly being that was the self band that was on the outside. We
Yeah.
said that one's really interesting because Moon Knight is just so good into a lot of the roster overall, especially those over there on the right. I'm just a little surprised on that one. And then we got Winter Soldier as the only Marvel fighter left on there. That one's interesting with his ability there. It kind of helps Yanenga out a little bit there since she doesn't have cancels. She kind of has some cards in her deck that aren't dead against Winter Soldier because, Achilles would have feints against Winter Soldier, which would be just like some dead cards that really can't do anything.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
just some different interesting things. And of course, Bigfoot's always just solid all around.
Yep. So it's interesting to note that, the bands on the inner section, the Luke and the Houdini, those were the opponent bands. So then you're looking at the other three fighters when you're deciding your self-bans. And honestly, I'm a little bit surprised that Phantom didn't self-ban the Bigfoot in that situation because Bigfoot is really good against Houdini, but Houdini, he banned Houdini. And Bigfoot can struggle against Yanenga and She-Hulk even, and Achilles can go pretty even with Bigfoot. So I think Moon Knight has the better chances into fighters like Achilles and She-Hulk rather than Bigfoot, actually. So I'm a little bit surprised to see Phantom self-banning the Moon Knight here, but it might just be a comfort thing as well. If you are comfortable with a fighter and you have another fighter that maybe has better matchups on paper or statistically, but you don't have experience with the fighter, well, then those statistics don't really matter anymore, right? It kind of goes out the window. So you really got to kind of lean into your comfort picks more often than not because that definitely makes a huge difference in how well, the fighter is going to be piloted throughout that game. So
definitely, we know that PhantomX is a very good player there, but Bigfoot is going to be a lot simpler character to maneuver than Moon Knight. Moon Knight has that strange quirk with his identity constantly changing, and it just makes him a much more complicated one, and he may just feel that Bigfoot just being simpler to work with, that he can get the same value out of him without having to put in quite as much mental budget into it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big factor to consider too because the players are playing with a timer. So they have 1 minute per turn that is kind of free time. Once that minute has passed, you're going to start depleting your overall time bank that you begin the match with, which is 5 minutes for your time bank. So you get that first free minute, and then your time starts depleting, and then at the end of your turn, you're going to get refunded that 1 minute or however long you spent for that turn if it's less than a minute. So you're going to keep refreshing, but once you start dipping into that overall time bank, you don't get that back. And if you run out of time, you're forced to just end your turn in place. If there's any extra actions you have available to you, they're going to be forced maneuvers in place. And if you happen to overdraw as a result of those forced maneuvers, you have to discard the card that you drew for the overdraw. So you don't have the choice that you'd normally get for the end of turn discards. And yeah, it doesn't make you lose the game on the spot like we had done previously throughout the tournaments in the early stages of the timer, but it can still be a huge detriment and really can warp a game if you're not ready for it. So you got to be mindful of the timer, and like you mentioned, Jeremy, fighters that have more overhead, more mentally taxing, they can definitely dip into that timer. So that's why fighters like Muldoon, who are very position-oriented, are very difficult to play under the timer. And Moon Knight having to play the form changes and think ahead about, okay, what form am I going to be in the next turn or the next 2 turns, and try to plan for that in terms of your tempo and your game flow, definitely adds some additional thinking time to the process. And if you're not comfortable with that, if you don't play that fighter a lot, that's definitely going to probably burn you throughout the match. So I could see, Bigfoot is a little bit simpler and he's just well-rounded. So We'll see if Phantom can get the Bigfoot win, but if I had to put my money on a fighter that's getting locked out of this match, it would surprisingly be the Bigfoot. But we're going to have to wait and see. I believe they do have the matchup ready for game 1, so let's take a look at what we have here. I believe it's going to be Winter Soldier versus Achilles. And so Winter Soldier and Achilles. So mplaza, I believe, is the follower, so he gets the map choice. So I'm not really surprised to see Achilles being chosen first, seeing as Achilles wants to be on a small map so he can have Patroclus be defeated and then just go rampage on the opponent on a small map, being able to attack them every turn. So not really surprised there. But this is not the greatest matchup for Winter Soldier, because if Pat can go down early, Achilles just hits so hard that Winter Soldier can't really handle that kind of damage output and pressure. But then again, it can be a bit difficult for Pat to die off in this matchup, because Winter Soldier can attack with his low value reprograms just to cycle rather than throwing his big attacks. So we have also seen Phantom play this particular matchup previously in the bracket against Bjorn, I believe it was. And Bjorn did get the win, but it seemed to me while watching that match that everything that could go right for Bjorn was going right. And so that definitely helped out Achilles. And it looked like an easy win for Phantom, but in the end, it turned out to be very close. We saw him start to make a comeback and almost stabilize. So I definitely have faith in Phantom's Winter Soldier here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the decks. We can start off with Winter Soldier and see what he's all about here. So there is the Winter Soldier deck with a few key cards. And Alex, you want to take it away and run us down what Winter Soldier is all about?
Sure. So, Winter Soldier is a very tricky fighter. He was introduced alongside Black Widow and Black Panther in the Marvel King and Country set. And he did cause a bit of a stir when he first released, but since then, I think he's settled into a much nicer place in the meta. The main thing that Winter Soldier has going for him is that first card you see there, the Reprogram, which is only a 2-value versatile, which is pretty terrible. But the effect allows you to choose any 3 cards in your discard pile, shuffle them back in your deck, whether that be another Reprogram, any of your high-value attacks, or any of your high-value defenses. Reprogram is an exceptionally strong card in Winter Soldier deck, especially when paired with his ability, which prevents any of his cards from being cancelled.
All right, so do you think, Alex, do you think the Winter Soldier is going to be trying to just play the fatigue game in this matchup then and just get as many cycles with the reprogram as possible, or do you think he's going to be throwing some big hits with those 6s?
That's the really weird part about Winter Soldier. He has the potential to go infinite, but in a lot of matchups, that's a lot harder than it sounds, just because outside of his exceptional block in Complete the Mission, which is a 3 that allows you to boost it, or if you so choose, to reflect the damage back to the opponent if you take any. His blocks are not that great, having a lot of 3s and 2s, and only having 15 health. And Achilles will chew through 15 health, absolutely no problem. So I think Winter Soldier's best chance here is to kind of stall the game out at first, let Pat live a little bit until you get to that probably 15 card mark or so, and then after Achilles has spent enough of his resources, kill Pat, and that's when Winter Soldier can just start hammering in with 6s, such as Without Remorse, which is just a blank 6 for Winter Soldier, but it does come with a downside that allows his opponent to draw a card, which isn't great, but it's also a 6, and Winter Soldier has 6 of those to throw at people, which will kill you very, very fast. So overall, I would say Winter Soldier probably is better off actually taking the fight to Achilles after a certain point and just doing away with him instead of trying to stall it out and go infinite.
Yeah, it really depends, right? It's all about the dynamic of when does Pat get killed off and what is the game state looking like at that point. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how he navigates this matchup. But let's go ahead and take a look at Achilles with all this talk of the Greek hero here. And Angel, do you want to run us by Achilles?
Of course, Achilles, most known for likely his ability, which allows when Patroclus is defeated, he does get 2 random cards discarded from his hand, but for the rest of the game, he gets +2 in all of his attacks. Some key cards here to note are stuff like Battle Frenzy from Patroclus, which is a 3 printed, and in the after combat effects does deal 2 damage to both fighters in the combat. So Patroclus, who is a fighter who typically wants to be defeated at some point and allow Achilles to get that ability, does also deal damage with a lot of cards in the deck. Another one of those cards that Patroclus can be a little bit of an annoyance with is Brothers in Arms, which is a 4 that Achilles and Patroclus can both use, and it allows Patroclus to gain an action if he's attacking with it, as long as he's not defeated. Or Achilles, whenever he uses it, also will gain an action as long as Patroclus is not defeated. So it's interesting because there are benefits and there are also downsides to Patroclus being alive or defeated. So it all comes down to what the player using Achilles would like to do in the specific scenario and in whichever situation they're in.
Yeah, Achilles is definitely a very versatile fighter. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Angel.
Another important card that reflects the interactions between Achilles and Patroclus is under Achilles' Helm, which early in the game you may look at it and be like, oh, it's a printed 2 defense. That's very weak. But as long as Patroclus is alive, Achilles may swap spaces with Patroclus and have Patroclus take the damage for him instead, which once again gets Patroclus closer to being defeated and Achilles' ability being activated.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the game, is when does Achilles get his effects activated. So that's definitely a huge determining factor of how he's going to have to play this matchup. And if, let's see, it looks like they do have the map as well. If we want to take a look at that, it's going to be, the bans were Raptor Paddock and Hierot, so both tight maps being banned, and it looks like they are going to go to Sunnydale. So let's take a look at that map. And Jeremy, do you have anything to say about Sunnydale?
Well, this one is an interesting map in that I think this may be one of the most balanced and neutral maps in all of Unmatched. And that's really what it is known for. And a lot of times if you're picking this one, you are just trying to take everything from the map out of the equation and just make it about the fighters. If you're choosing this, you think you have a good chance of being able to win just on your characters, what your character can do, and your abilities in playing. And that's generally where you see this one get picked, is once again just trying to not have the map, just the layout or the mechanics of the map really get into things. And so if you think you have an advantage on it, this could be a really good map for you here. Once again, which of our players chose this map here? I'm sorry, I got a little behind on that.
Yeah, mplaza was the follower, so he would have chosen this map here. Phantom banned away the Raptor Paddock and Hierot maps, and so mplaza chose this map as Achilles.
Okay, so yeah, he must. Another thing on this one is if you know you're not going to have advantage, this is a pretty decent one to be in that second position on. It's not as detrimental as some other maps. So, but it is an interesting one there that I think he's just trying to not have the map fight against him.
Yeah, I like how you said, when you pick Sunnydale, it's about the fighters. It's not the map. You're kind of taking the map out of the equation because it's just such a neutral map. It's pretty fair in mostly all aspects. Some ranged fighters can have a bit of an advantage, but Winter Soldier being a solo fighter, it kind of negates that advantage. It's usually when you have multiple sidekicks and you can kind of corral people in a zone. But other than that, it's a pretty neutral map. So it's a bit interesting to see mplaza choose this, in my opinion, because it's so neutral and it's a bit big, not from center, but if you go out to the edges of the map, it is a long way to the other end. So we might see that come into play, and it definitely could help out Phantom in the long run. So I'm not sure how I feel about the pick, but it's definitely not a bad pick. It's pretty neutral, so we'll see what happens. It's just that when you have map advantage, you usually want to try to, squeak out every little bit of advantage you can get from it. So it'll be interesting to see. But the players are just about ready. But before we jump into Vorpal, let's very briefly check out a quick video about how Unmatched works so that if you're all unfamiliar, we can see what this game's all about. Unmatched is a card-based tactical fighting game featuring various characters from history, literature, and fantasy. The goal? Reduce the opposing hero's health to 0. Players take turns performing any combination of 2 actions, from maneuvering, scheming, or attacking. A maneuver causes the player to draw a card from their deck and lets them move any of their fighters around the board. They may increase the distance of their move by discarding a card known as a boost. When a scheme card is played, simply follow the text on the card to complete the action. For an attack, the turn player will choose a card from their hand to place face down for combat. The opponent will have the option to place one of their cards down as defense. The value on the cards will determine the damage dealt in combat. Melee fighters can only attack adjacent spaces, while ranged fighters can also attack any space within their color-coordinated zone. Some characters have sidekicks to help them out, and others fight solo. Each hero has their own unique abilities and deck of cards to bring the character to life. Because in battle, there are no equals. Alright, so for anybody watching who is unfamiliar with Unmatched, maybe you have heard about it but never played it yourself, that's what it's all about. That's Unmatched in a nutshell, and it's really a fantastic game. We all are here because we absolutely love it, and it's very easy to get addicted very fast. So I will caution you about that, but also I definitely encourage you to try it because it's just a blast. There are so many cool characters in this game, ranging from public domain fighters to IP fighters that you've seen, such as Jurassic Park or Buffy the Vampire Slayer even, or Marvel is the big new one. There's just so many cool fighters out there that you can definitely find something that interests you, and there are more and more coming on the way. So it's just an amazing game. So huge shout out to Restoration Games, the developer of the game, for making something so amazing, right? And also I do want to do a couple quick thanks to Vorpal Board, the people who run this platform that we use to stream all these tournament matches. They're really accommodating with us, so big thanks to them. And thank you to Frank, the maker of League, which is an amazing Unmatched-based website where he hosts all kinds of events, official and community-run events. So he is very willing to help out and just kind of get people into the scene, get people playing as much as possible. And you can check out all kinds of awesome stuff like fighter stats and player stats even. And you can play the ranked ladder on there and all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely check out umleague.net if you are interested. And thank you to the viewers, because this stream wouldn't be anything without everybody watching. So I hope you all are ready for a fantastic weekend of Unmatched, and I know I am. So players are ready in the Vorpal room, so let's jump on over there and see what happens between PhantomX and mplaza. So here we see Winter Soldier going first against Achilles on Sunnydale, and I am not surprised to see Winter Soldier going first because whoever does not get the map advantage gets position advantage. So they get to choose whether they want to start first or second. And when you have the choice, you normally want to start first just because you get to take the first action. You can choose to either go aggressive and attack the opponent first turn, or you can just double maneuver and get up to a big hand size, which forces the opponent into a weird position where if they want to go attack you, they are attacking into a hand deficit, which can be a little bit scary sometimes. Or they back off, but then you, as the first player, you're each at 7 cards, you still get the initiative to make that first move, that first attack, which can put you up in hand advantage ever so slightly, which can make a big difference in the long run. So I think Phantom going first, also it lets him find his defenses more quickly, which is probably the main thing he's looking for if he's trying to play the long fatigue game.
I definitely agree. I personally think that Winter Soldier is a fighter that you do want to build up your defenses with, because Winter Soldier is a fighter that does not like being aggressed, and Winter Soldier has a couple of defenses that are so solid that, honestly, it depends on what fighter you're going against, right? But there are some fighters where all you really need is one defense and a feint as your other defense, and you're likely to be all right. Because as long as you block the feint into any type of action gain or double attack that a fighter may have, such as Achilles with something like Brothers in Arms that gains him action as long as Patroclus is not defeated, he is able to block all of the attacks that come into him and remain safe for that turn. Of course, it comes down to in what order do the attacks come in, and will Winter Soldier be able to call out the correct attacks in the right order.
Yeah, the combat interactions, the coin flips there that occur are definitely a huge determining factor. And looks like we're going to see the first one happen right off the bat. mplaza's not backing down. He's not afraid of the hand advantage that Winter Soldier has. He just wants to get Patroclus in there ASAP, which I like that call because, as you said, Winter Soldier wants to feint Pat's attacks so that Pat can't do the self-damage onto himself. But then you do risk running into the Brothers in Arms and taking 2 damage over the top of the feint. So those combat coin flips are huge, and we're going to see the first one happen right off the bat. Ooh, that is definitely a favorable interaction for Phantom here because he didn't feint the Brothers, and it wasn't a self-damage card. But that will gain Pat another action if he wants to make another attack here.
Definitely. We see Wily fighting, starting to whittle down Patroclus a bit here. Once again, it depends on what mplaza wants to do with Achilles and Patroclus.
Oh, wow.
Solid feint. That is the card that you definitely want to cancel against Patroclus. The Battle Frenzy that has the after combat effect that deals 2 damage to both fighters in the combat.
You see Phantom attacking here. Did he say he was attacking Achilles? Because they are in the same zone.
I imagine that has to be the case. They're kind of playing at a lightning speed here.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
moving along, which I definitely like from the Achilles side. I think he has to come in pretty aggressive early on.
That is scary for Phantom.
So under Achilles' helm was played here, which does let Achilles swap into Patroclus as the defender. So Patroclus will take the damage. 4 damage going on to Pat right there. And he can draw a card off the Without Remorse effect.
Patroclus down to 1 health. We just need to know whether or not this is a good thing or not for mplaza. I believe that there are ups and downs to this because, yes, Patroclus gets defeated, and as mentioned previously, once Patroclus is defeated, Achilles gets +2 for the rest of the game. Who doesn't want stronger attacks? However, that means that other than the Battle Frenzy that was used, every other Patroclus card that isn't left in the deck is now just a deadweight card, a boost value card. And if Achilles gets some unfortunate luck and starts running into those cards, it could spell disaster for him very quickly.
Yeah, I think you also have to look at some of the fine print there on Achilles' ability, the card draw on winning against a fighter that wants to try to exhaust you and go a long ways. That can start really working against you. So finding the right time for Pat to die is, well, it's key in a lot of matchups, but very important in this one.
Definitely.
Just don't see the spear throw come out from Achilles this turn, which makes sense because if you wanted to aggress with Pat, you would have had to boost in after maneuvering, and then you attack, which would have dropped your hand size even more. If Pat died, then Achilles is losing 2 of his cards, and Winter Soldier could potentially just throw 12 damage into Achilles.
Especially since the ability of Achilles when he discards those cards when Patroclus is defeated, they're random, they're not chosen. So Achilles can't choose which ones he wants to get rid of. For example, if he has a Patroclus card in hand that he no longer needs, he actually has to have them randomly discarded, and they could get rid of either his best attacks or his best defenses, or one of each. And that can be very scary for Achilles, especially when he's at 4 cards in hand.
Yeah, those random discards can definitely make or break any Achilles game, and I do like the early spear throw here too, because with Pat being so low, if Phantom wants Pat dead, Pat is dead, because he can throw a 6 into Pat, and Pat can't do anything to survive that 6, guaranteed. So as soon as Phantom wants it, Pat will die off, and mplaza with that spear throw in hand is such a valuable card, doing 2 auto damage to Winter Soldier that he can't do anything about. You know, you want to use that ASAP so that you don't risk losing it to the random discards. And an early reprogram here lets Phantom put 3 cards shuffled back into the deck, but into an Achilles heel. It's a fine defense. And Manipulation gonna let Phantom draw immediately right back up to 5 cards. So it was a draw 3 right there. And mplaza can choose to draw up to 5. Or no, he played Bucky.
Bucky.
You're right.
Speaking of Boy Named Bucky, I find it very interesting that Phantom decided to bring that card back into his deck. Yeah, they 3 boost, but realistically, you don't use the effect too much, and that's a scheme. That's a card you can't attack or block with, and just could end up being a dead draw later on. How do you guys feel about that?
I think it is very peculiar, but as you mentioned, I think that it is mainly due to the boost value, because cards like Complete the Mission allow you to boost your defense value, and that Boy Named Bucky and Manipulation are the 2 cards that allowed that card to be a 6 value defense, which will be very important against a very high attack fighter like Achilles.
Yeah, I do actually kind of like that recursion of the Boy Named Bucky, just like, as you mentioned, Angel, for that boost value, because Achilles gets very scary once Pat dies off, and as we can see from how this game's going so far, that's pretty likely to happen relatively soon. So I kind of like recurring that boost value just so that you have it in the future. And the only other option was Wily fighting, which is kind of mediocre, because if you don't want Pat to die, the Wily you don't want to defend against Pat with. And also you don't want to defend against it once Pat is already dead when Achilles is attacking, because it's just a 3 over likely a 6, and that's some huge damage. So I think I actually agree with that recursion call.
I want to say, I am really loving the aggression coming out from Phantom's Winter Soldier here.
That's the thing about
Go on.
That's the thing about Winter Soldier is typically when the fighter first released, the biggest concern that a lot of people had was that he could just run the whole game, and due to his deck going potentially infinite, he could just stay away the entire game and just win in fatigue. However, the better players have realized, and the more experienced players have realized, that Winter Soldier does need to attack in many instances, and there are times where he can even attack better than his opponent. Once again, as you mentioned, Alex, you'll see that Winter Soldier has 6 6s. He has Bionic Arm, which is a printed 2 value, but since his cards cannot be cancelled, as long as he's adjacent to the fighter that he is attacking, that is always going to be a 6. And then he has Without Remorse, which is a printed 6, which allows the opponent to potentially draw a card if they'd like, because Winter Soldier has to have the star effects that are the downside effects to his incredibly strong ability. So Winter Soldier does have a lot of options to be an aggressive fighter. It's just the fact that he doesn't like being aggressive himself is what makes people think, oh, well, typically I need to run away, build up my hand, have those defenses at the ready at all times.
You're absolutely right, Angel. However, we saw an absolutely crushing interaction come out right there with the Battle Frenzy into Complete the Mission. But never mind, immediately evening things up with some of the best hits you could get off of Achilles' ability.
I honestly think those are the 2 best cards you could possibly hit. There's nothing else you want more than a huge value, 6 value attack that can also let you move them away, or move yourself away, or a Battle Hardened, which can recur a Spear Throw, which is 2 auto damage, or loop itself continuously. So although Pat does go down early, those were premium discards for Phantom.
Easily. I mean, losing the Battle Hardened is very, very intimidating for mplaza. being one of the most important cards, because once the opposing fighter, obviously Winter Soldier is able to recur his feints, but once the opposing fighter is out of cancels, typically Battle Hardens just continuously happen, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. There's just fours coming at you back to back to back, and Achilles already losing one of them makes him very uncomfortable, especially when you see Winter Soldier's hand up to 6, and Achilles is only down to 2, so he better start winning some combats with the +2 attacks that he has been able to achieve now that Patroclus is defeated.
Yeah, this is where that map might come back to bite him, though, because yeah, he can double maneuver up this next turn and take center stage, I call it, which is basically the most center point on the map where you can reach everywhere, every other space within the smallest amount of spaces, movement spaces. But once you go out to the edge to reach them for an attack, then you're going to have to retake center on your following turn if they run to the very opposite side, because you won't be able to run far enough to reach. So it might get a little bit difficult for Achilles to keep up the aggressive pressure, and that may give Phantom time to complete the missions in order to have those big value blocks and survive the Achilles onslaught. But it is quite early. I do apologize, the deck tracker for Achilles is having a little bit issue right now. He is not at 30 out of 30 cards, but he is at 17. I'll keep you guys updated, just so you know, because obviously deck count is a huge factor in competitive Unmatched, especially with a fighter like Achilles, who has a limited kind of a fuse on his deck.
Definitely, and as Jeremy pointed out earlier, Achilles does, whenever he wins combat, he does draw a card now that Patroclus is defeated, but that can also kind of be a double-edged sword, right? Because, as you mentioned, deck counts are very important in a competitive Unmatched, and as soon as you run out of cards in your deck, you start taking 2 damage for every single maneuver action that you make. So this just means that Achilles is going to run out faster than Winter Soldier, which isn't a surprise, considering that Winter Soldier does have the ability to recur and potentially go infinite with his deck, but it is a factor that basically puts Achilles on a timer. He now is set to have to defeat Winter Soldier, and he has to take him out before he runs out of cards and takes himself out instead.
Yeah, and you've got Winter Soldier has a lot of low value defenses in there, so you can see Achilles getting off a number of wins in there, sometimes not by a lot. Really, Achilles wants to put a lot of damage into him. He doesn't want to just do like 1 or 2 damage to Winter Soldier, because he's just like, drawing cards all the time when he does that. And then also losing that battle hardened is essentially like losing 2 cards.
Yeah, you definitely want to be maximizing the damage output for each interaction. If you can get 2 damage versus 1 damage, it's actually a huge difference for Achilles, because you're still drawing the same amount of cards for winning, but you get twice the damage output, so that can be huge. Now we are seeing a Bionic Arm as a 6 go over an Achilles heel, which will gain Winter Soldier in action, but the Bionic Arm does let Achilles move out of Winter Soldier's zone to avoid a follow-up attack with that extra action.
However, if Achilles runs away, that lets Winter Soldier respond in kind, and now Winter Soldier's all the way across the map, and Achilles might not even be able to reach him.
Yeah, that was a really interesting interaction, and maybe mplaza's fine with that because he's got such a low hand count. If he had to play Achilles heel, maybe that means he doesn't have anything better, and so he probably is okay just taking a double maneuver turn and retaking center stage on this upcoming turn.
Achilles heel, one of the most thematic cards in Achilles' deck. A 4 value defense, which would make you think, yes, that's a really good defense. It's a solid 4. That's a great number to be, great number to block. However, it says if you lose the combat, the opponent does gain the action. So it allows them to either continue up in combat or build up their hand again. In this case, Achilles was able to flee, so that allows him to not have to take another attack. But in other instances where the opponent doesn't have a movement effect like that for Achilles, he might just keep taking hits, and he might not have any other defenses left in hand.
Yeah, it can be very scary sometimes. Now, I really like this positioning from Phantom because he knows he's standing right adjacent to center stage. And so he knows he's kind of daring mplaza to take center. He's like, okay, go ahead, come take center, and I will just be right adjacent to you, ready to double attack you on my turn. So I do like that move. And now mplaza doesn't take true center. So now Phantom, if he wants to just run away to the corner, mplaza will be 5 spaces away, which is a world of difference between 5 to 4 away, because that means that if you're 5 spaces away, Achilles has to boost with one of his precious helms, which is the 4-value boost, or his double attacks, which can be very, very strong, being a 3 that goes into a 5. So it's a very tough choice, but there's plenty of 2 boosts in the Achilles deck, like the Pat cards that are no longer usable, that you are happy to throw away for a boost to move 4. But moving 5 or more is definitely a bigger task. So I do like that positioning from Phantom, but he's just going to go aggressive and come in for another attack.
I absolutely love how aggressively Phantom has been playing. We've seen him play this matchup before against Bjorn, and he tried to play it much more passively at the start, and it did not go well for him. Here, it looks like he's learned from his matchup against Bjorn, and he's deciding, I just have to kill Achilles. And it's working wonderfully for him at the moment. He's still in a scary spot because Achilles has 4 6s he can throw and a potential battle-hardened recursion. But I feel like he's in a great position right now.
I agree, especially considering, as we just saw, the reprogram got used, and 2 bionic arms were returned into deck, so it definitely proves to you that Phantom is definitely going for a more aggressive Winter Soldier than we typically see.
Yeah, I do love that you point that out, Alex, because it definitely seems to be the case. Like you mentioned, Angel, I mean, those recursions right there kind of tell the whole story about Phantom's game plan. He could have gotten back, manipulation or the other reprogram, but he just chooses to take back all those aggressive cards because he just wants to keep smacking Achilles with these massive value attacks. And he's just going to try to kill Achilles before he can kill him back. So definitely a slugfest here, which is not the typical Winter Soldier game plan, but you love to see it.
Another factor I'd like to point out, and this may be a reason why Phantom is electing to go a bit more aggressive, there are some cards in Winter Soldier's deck that, due to Achilles +2 attack, no longer do anything. The first one that comes to mind that's a big deal is that Born in the Barracks on defense is just a blank 3 now. Because Achilles has no printed ones, and that means that Born in the Barracks will never win combat on defense, which means that its effect, which says if you won the combat, Winter Soldier recovers 2 health, will never happen. So that's already a big deal, because that essentially means that either A, you want to block with Born in the Barracks to be a blank 3, or B, you want to try and attack with it and try to see if Achilles doesn't get exactly what he needs to block with, maybe he only has a helm in hand. But it just shows you that Born in the Barracks, which is a very important card in Winter Soldier's deck, is a lot weaker immediately now that Patroclus is defeated.
I do agree, but there is one card that Achilles can throw that Barracks would win against, and that is the first half of the test for weakness, the double attack. So if
That's right.
It is very risky, though, because, most of the attacks will win and win by a landslide. So you definitely don't want to be throwing a blank 3 into a 6. But here's that interaction you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right there, the exact interaction that I had given an example of. We see Born in the Barracks offensively into a helm, dealing 1 damage and allowing Winter Soldiers to recover 2 health. There's a very big deal. Any amount of health that Winter Soldier can get back is very important, especially against a fighter that'll typically be winning combat offensively.
I think that was a massive swing in this game, and I think it was a great call by Phantom because we saw mplaza boost away to get into that solo pink space just to make it a little bit more difficult for Winter Soldier to reach. And I think that may have been a giveaway that he doesn't have great defenses. So Phantom saw that and he took the opportunity to go for that offensive Barracks. And it paid off massive because not only did he get to heal 2 health, but he also deprives Achilles of one of those precious 4-value boosts. So that is just such a big swing in the tempo of this game here.
And going off what you said about Achilles lacking defenses potentially in hand, this might give Phantom the opportunity to be like, all right, well, now that I know that you blocked with a Helm when I was attacking into you, when Patroclus is already defeated, I might just start tossing in some 6s here and see what I can do. We see another Barracks going into a feint, recovering 2 health. This is massive for Winter Soldier, recovering already a total of 4 health and almost tying up the health difference.
Phantom is just in a commanding spot right now. Achilles' best chance right now is to just go in and hope that Phantom has absolute carnage for blocks and that your 6s can somehow find you at 10 remaining damage, because right now it is looking grim.
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah,
start,
Achilles
though.
It's a great interaction, though. This is a start. Ooh.
A test for weakness and a reflex memories blocking the second half of test for weakness. This will have Winter Soldier discard 2 random cards from his hand and draw 2, but typically reflex memories is used. I've noticed that Winter Soldiers typically use it as a last defense and typically have mostly reds in hand left whenever they have to discard 2 random so that they don't mind losing them and drawing 2 new cards.
Wow.
As we see, 2 program to kills.
2 garbage cards.
Very easily the worst card in Winter Soldier's deck, being just a blank 4 at best.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how these random discards have gone for these two. PhantomX getting very good luck on the random discards, and mplaza's earlier not being really great, actually being pretty terrible.
Yeah, the complete opposite end of
I
the
know what
spectrum.
Phantom's doing. He has a manipulation in hand. Oh no.
Wow.
Wow. So we see the bionic arm go into the helm, dealing quite a bit of damage onto Achilles, and then an immediate manipulation right afterward to draw 5 cards and cancel the star effect with a boy named Bucky, the card that he recurred earlier in the game, making a lot of use on a card that many might overlook.
That was probably the best use of Boy Named Bucky that I have ever seen.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I am not a big fan of Winter Soldier, but Phantom is making him look like the coolest character in the game right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely an unfortunate turn of events for mplaza. I thought things were going very well for him in the beginning when Patroclus got a little bit of chip damage and took a big hit from the 6 into the helm, and things were looking good, but suddenly things have definitely gone downhill for Achilles.
And that's a wonderful thing about Unmatched. A battle can be so even, and despite the catchphrase being in battle there are no equals, there are times where there are equals, and you will find matches where it just seesaws between 2 fighters back and forth. And right now, the seesaw is definitely rising for Winter Soldier.
Definitely.
It isn't over for Achilles, though. He still has 4 6s to throw, 2 double attacks, and potential battle-hardened recursion to either bring back a 6 or to throw another spear. And Jeremy, how many complete the missions does Winter Soldier currently have in deck?
Complete the missions, I think that he has 1 in deck. I don't think he had grabbed 1 back. Winter Soldier is a little frustrating to track with these cards coming back and forth out of his discard pile. But there's 1 of the complete the missions right there.
I think it was interesting he didn't boost, so he dealt the damage back to Achilles, and this is likely lethal this turn. He'll probably throw 2 6s, and there's nothing Achilles can do about that.
Yeah, as long as Phantom doesn't throw Bionic Arm and lets Achilles run away, that's 2 6s is the GG. Oh, never mind. We forgot about Hermes.
Well, 1
Hermes
card.
keeping Achilles barely in the game.
But the next 6 will be lethal. I don't think there's anything Achilles can do at this point.
Yeah, I don't think Achilles has the firepower to take Winter Soldier down. I mean, before he's just got to get the 1 damage through.
Yep.
even a reflex or a really cheeky marksman, if you can somehow set that up. As long as you have a 5, that's enough to kill a killing card now.
Mm-hmm.
See Achilles' last stand here. Let's see if he can get anything to work for this final turn. Otherwise, if Phantom has a 5 or a 6, as previously mentioned, Winter Soldier just closes it out here.
Yeah, Phantom would have to have like no defenses in there, and that's just I
Just
don't
gotta
see
YOLO
that.
a double attack.
Yeah, you gotta go. You gotta play to your outs, right? You gotta go in here and throw a double attack and just hope. You know, that's your only
Yeah, that's
chance.
all you
Exactly.
got.
And also, maybe Phantom doesn't have the 5 yet or the 6. You know, maybe he doesn't have the lethal attack. I mean, it's likely he does.
Oh.
Well, this. Okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we
Wily
see Winter
fighting.
Soldier saying, "No, you're the one going down this turn," with a wily fighting dealing the last damage needed to take out Achilles
Wow.
and take the game.
Let's listen in on the players a little bit here.
Defense over a 2. So I drew Helm, 3 consecutive feints, and then the 2 pat cards.
Oh.
And
And,
then
and he
all-
didn't even have anything to attack me with. When I went here,
Oh.
he like spear throw me first action. I was like, what?
Yeah. No, it was all feints and battle hardens, and then I drew
Actually,
these. So like
Feint is not that bad because you can't cancel my effects. Whatever, it's bad.
exactly, I was debating trying to attack to try to at least get like card draw, but if I didn't get the draw, then I would have had like 2 cards in hand. So yeah, when I was over down here and you debated attacking or just maneuvering, I was here and you debated attacking or maneuvering. I had 2 Brothers in Arms and 2 Pat cards, so I had no defenses there either. So I don't know. I feel like if I could have drawn into the defenses or at least like a 6 value attack, so I'm consistently drawing, I had a good chance. I mean, Pat dying early is what I was hoping for.
Yeah, pretty good for
Push
you.
on the back foot. But then I kept defending with the heals because I was like, I'd rather take 2 damage than let you get your healing off. But then eventually I ran out of defenses above 2, which considering that I had so many left was rough. And at that point it was over because if I attack big, you can just play that one that deals damage back to me. You can play Wily. I can't do anything about this.
When I started to have more health than you, that's GG because I just.
Oh yeah. I mean, in that swing, I lost 2 health and you gained 4 in the span of a turn.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was over.
It's value 2 turns.
All right, so there we have game 1, PhantomX taking the win with Winter Soldier over mplaza's Achilles. And again, as we stated, I think that was just a roller coaster of a game. I think it was really Achilles favored at the beginning, and really Phantom turned the tide. And very similar to the matchup we saw him play in this same matchup against Bjorn earlier in the bracket. Although, I think, like you mentioned, Alex, he learned from the previous game and he played it a little differently, and we saw that aggression pay off in the end. So, really good adaptation there by Phantom, showing why he deserves to have this place in the top 4. So, very, very impressive game. But do any of you have any particular thoughts that you want to say about that one before we talk about the next?
It was really interesting in there to see just one place in there where we kind of saw just the momentum shift for the entire game there, where it was looking, as I said, at Achilles, and we kind of thought early on that might be a good matchup, but it just kind of swung partway through, and then Achilles was just never able to get any type of steam back after that.
Yep, and so that's just sometimes how it goes, you know. This is a card game after all, and in any card game, there's a lot of luck involved. You know, we saw the random discards go very favorably for Phantom and very unfavorably for mplaza, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And with the card draw as well, you know, we heard mplaza talking about he had turn after turn of no good defensive draws and no good attacks either. He drew the feints, he drew the helms and the pat cards, and you can't really do much with those. You do the best with what you have, and he definitely was looking good in the beginning, but things didn't play out in his favor. But that's okay. He's not out of it yet. We're going to go into game 2, which we don't know the fighter or the map just yet, but it's either going to be Achilles or Yanenga for mplaza. He gets to choose. He knows he is going up against Bigfoot, and since he was the loser of the previous game, he gets to choose his advantage. So he can either choose map advantage or position advantage. If he chooses map, then Phantom will get 2 map bans out of all the maps available, and mplaza will choose the map from the remaining. And then Phantom will get position advantage, where he gets to choose if he starts first or second. So, Alex, do you have any prediction on, first of all, maybe which fighter mplaza is going to be looking to play next?
If I'm in mplaza's position, Achilles. Every single time, Achilles. As Yanenga generally has a pretty favorable matchup into Bigfoot, I feel like, while Bigfoot can win that, and having map advantage certainly helps, I would feel more comfortable with Yen on most maps. Achilles versus Bigfoot is a very even matchup. It's one of my personal favorites. I've played it many times, and it goes both ways. I feel like you need every advantage you can get as Achilles, and so I would probably be taking map with him here.
Okay. Angel, do you agree with that? What do you think?
Yes, I definitely agree. I think that Achilles has the potential to, despite Bigfoot's really great defenses, be able to hit over those lots of 4s that Bigfoot tends to have. And the combination of Achilles' high attacks once Patroclus is defeated, and Patroclus's lots of damage in general without combat damage before Patroclus is defeated, it allows Bigfoot to potentially be in a bit more of a comfortable situation than I believe Yanenga would, especially considering that Yanenga, one of her biggest issues is that she suffers from draw power, and if Bigfoot is able to just keep going in on her, she might just crumble.
Yeah. And so what type of map do you think like Achilles in particular would be looking for against Bigfoot if we think that Achilles would be coming up next?
I feel like Achilles might desire to go close quartered again, because Bigfoot, while being a slugger himself, he's ready to go for any type of combat head-to-head. He also doesn't mind stepping back sometimes and rebuilding his hand. He has a lot of schemes that he can use as passes. He can even send in Jackalope and use a couple horns, maybe even some attacks itself, because Jackalope has access to almost the entire deck, just like Bigfoot, with the exception of 2 attacks and a scheme.
Yeah, I definitely think Achilles is looking for something tight, that you can reach Bigfoot in, again, the lowest amount of movement spaces necessary. So something like Raptor Paddock or Hierat, maybe, or even the new map, Sanctum Sanctorum, out of the Brains and Brawn box, because that map, if any of you are unfamiliar, is definitely a game changer of a map, because it's the first map we've ever seen in the game with a move 3 center, which means from the center stage space, you can reach every other space in 3 movement, which is crazy. That means a fighter like Bigfoot, though, would be able to reach in a single maneuver because he is move 3. He doesn't even have to boost. So that could backfire, but I could definitely see Achilles wanting a map like that if given the chance.
How do you guys feel about T-Rex Paddock? Because, I don't know, I feel like as Achilles, I might actually want to avoid Sanctum. One, because of the move 3 center, like you pointed out, John. But also, I feel like not Achilles, Bigfoot just has so much better control of the items, having Jackalope, who will probably live a little longer, being able to play defensive so he can camp the tokens, and also the most important item on Sanctum, the Brazier of Enclave, I think it is, that lets you pull a scheme, Jackalope horns, out of the deck. Achilles can't really use that as well as Bigfoot, because the only scheme he'd be pulling out is Spear Throw, which would require Bigfoot or Jackalope to be in Achilles' zone. And I feel like that's a lot easier to play around than Jackalope just top-decking horns and ramming into you.
Yeah, good point. The items are always interesting because we don't see a lot of play with the items because they're kind of a wild card, right? And I don't think a lot of people really practice those maps too much because they don't expect to run into them a lot, and you'd only really be practicing them if you plan on using them, you know, against your opponents and catching them off guard maybe with some unfamiliarity. But they definitely change things up a lot, not just because of the versatile items that can modify your combat values, but obviously the scheme tokens can be incredibly powerful. And the Brazier, like you mentioned, Alex, that one's just crazy good for Jackalope, because oftentimes your goal with Jackalope is just to pull off all of your Jackalope horns before he dies off, and then you can just send him up front, use him as a meat shield, you know, body block, and let him, he's done his duty at that point, and you're fine with letting him go. But sometimes, you know, Jackalope horns, it's buried at the very bottom of your deck. But with that scheme token, it would just let you pull it out, and combined with the movement, you can likely reach every space within that 5 movement, so it'd be very difficult for Achilles to play around, if even possible at all, depending on where that item ends up. And the items also are always a random placement. You know what items are going to show up on a given map, but the placement is random and you don't find out until you've selected the map. So that, you know, little bit of uncertainty and randomness added definitely can deter a lot of competitive players from choosing a map like that, because they want to play on what they've practiced and tested, you know, things that are safe and known. So that little bit of
Yeah, and
go ahead, Jeremy. Go ahead.
yes, in a lot of ways, those Marvel maps are kind of the exact opposite of the Sunnydale map that we just saw, with Sunnydale being pretty much a basic simple map with nothing tricky or fancy going on with it. Those tokens just can, you know, some of those tokens can really swing games heavily. So yeah, I can definitely see if you're wanting to like not bring that randomness into it, avoiding those is a really good idea.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have our matchup here, and as you predicted, Alex, it is going to be Achilles versus Bigfoot. So Achilles is making the run back, and I think that definitely makes sense, because you usually want to play with your weaker fighter first when you have advantage, because that's the best chance. There's no difference in winning, you know, 2-0 versus 2-1, or losing 0-2 and 1-2, so it doesn't matter. This is elimination, so it's not about points, it's just about how can you give yourself the best chance to win the overall match, and giving your weaker fighter the advantage while you can is definitely the right play. So obviously, you know, with these players being top caliber players, they know that, they understand how the flow of the match goes, and we're going to see mplaza taking Achilles into Bigfoot this time. So let's take another quick look at Achilles and see what he's all about. So, Jeremy, you want to run us by Achilles again briefly?
Yeah, so Achilles, once again, is pretty much about Patroclus. When is Patroclus gonna die? Because there's some good things that happen for Achilles when Patroclus dies, and some bad things that happen. Getting that +2 to all of the attacks, but losing 2 cards immediately there. Randomly out of your hand rather, and then obviously the card draw that comes along with Achilles, which can be a double-edged sword. Not as bad against Bigfoot as some others, but we see cards there that are kind of designed to help Patroclus die, like Under Achilles' Helm and Battle Frenzy. Spear Throw being a great card for just getting damage into him. Battle Hardened, letting you recur cards, which is going to be a lot more beneficial against Bigfoot, although a lot of these are going to be things that would be targeted by Bigfoot's large number of cancels. But we can see that ways in there that Achilles can definitely put the numbers up when you start adding 2 to all of these values that he has in there. He can definitely take Bigfoot down. But once again, it is going to be, when do you want Pat to die? As Achilles, you want Pat to die on your terms and not when Bigfoot wants Pat to die. And that will be some of the big important stuff there for Achilles.
Yep, definitely. So let's take a look at our newer fighter, being Bigfoot. And I'll go ahead and explain this one, because this is definitely one of my favorite fighters and most played. Bigfoot is just such a cool fighter to have in this game, in my opinion. he is all about those big, large values and his little buddy, the Jackalope. And so we see a few key cards. Larger Than Life there is just a flat 6-value attack, which has 3 copies in the deck, which is just insane damage output there. Matching Excalibur from King Arthur, but times 3 copies in the deck, which is craziness. And then we're going to see Hoax is one of the best cards in the game, giving you a 4-value block. It could be also used on offense, but normally it's defensive. And after combat, you get to move your fighter up to 5 spaces, and you can move that fighter through spaces containing opposing fighters. So it's like a skirmish, but way better because you have increased movement, you can move through opponents, and it is non-conditional on winning the combat like the skirmish is. So Hoax is just an incredible card, and important to note that nearly all the cards in this deck are Ennies, which means Jackalope, the sidekick, can also use them. And speaking of the Jackalope, we see the Jackalope horns there. That's a key scheme for Jackalope. It's the only Jackalope-specific card in the deck. With 3 copies, lets move Jackalope move up to 5 spaces, also moving through opponents, and then dealing 2 damage to any one fighter adjacent to the Jackalope after that movement has completed. So he can run across the map and ping you for 2 damage right then and there, and it's just such a good card. And as mentioned before, you want to get all your Jackalope horns off, if possible, before Jack dies off. And then we're going to see Momentous Shift is just a big 5-value attack that Jackalope can also throw himself. And so you never know if Jackalope runs up with the horns and hits you for 2 auto damage and then attacks. You don't know if it's the shift or the regroup. And if you take the wrong attack, you can get a massive punish. But, you know, if you defend big, expecting the shift, and it is the regroup, well, that feels bad too. So there's definitely a lot of mind games to be had there. And Savagery is a key card in dealing with 1 health sidekicks for Bigfoot, being a 4-value attack that deals 1 auto damage to each fighter adjacent to him if you won the combat. So oftentimes 1 health sidekicks don't defend big, especially against Bigfoot with so many large values. They expect to die off anyways, so they go undefended. The Savagery triggers and gets the auto damage against the surrounding fighters. Interesting to note, though, that this is every fighter, so sometimes you see Bigfoot mess up and leave Jackalope adjacent to him, and the Savagery pings the Jackalope as well, which is a bit unfortunate, but it happens sometimes, happens to the best of us. But anyways, that's not super impactful in this matchup, especially because it gets full blocked by Achilles' heel, but those Larger Than Lives and Momentous Shifts are going to be very scary for Achilles to throw that Achilles' heel on defense, because those big values will hit over it and gain Bigfoot another action. But most importantly is Bigfoot's ability, which is if you are sharing no zones with opposing fighters at the end of your turn, you can draw an extra card, and that is optional. So whenever Bigfoot wants card draw, he can get it. And so by sending Jackalope up front and keeping Bigfoot back, you're able to aggress while keeping up card draw, which can be some incredible pressure against an opponent. And especially in a matchup like this that is so focused on fatigue, with Achilles burning his own deck out by drawing on winning combat, that ability usage is crucial. That's the biggest decision point that Bigfoot is going to have to make, is whether or not he wants to use his ability at any given moment. And those are the types of calls that will make or break the matchup, because sometimes you want to use the ability so you can keep up the pressure, like what we saw Winter Soldier do in that last Achilles game. But sometimes you don't want to have the initiative forced onto you. You want Achilles to have to be approaching so that you can just attack and then run away and make things difficult for Achilles having to boost, since you are move 3 and he is move 2. So you want to keep the initiative on Achilles, but in order to do that, you're going to have probably a larger deck count, although you do have some schemes that can be used as passes, which are schemes that don't draw you cards or gain you actions because they're not depleting your deck count when you use them. So it helps you out in the fatigue game and forcing that initiative. But Bigfoot is somewhat simple on the surface, but if you actually want to play him at a top competitive level, he is pretty complex, mainly because of that choice that you have every single turn about whether or not you want to use your ability for that card draw. So let's move on to talking about the maps. Interestingly enough, we did see Baskerville and Solomon's Mine banned out. So both of the passage maps, Phantom didn't want to give mplaza the secret passages, which is a little bit surprising because that left open Raptor Paddock, which is the map we are going to go to here. So a little bit surprised on that. But Angel, what do you think about the Raptor Paddock pick?
I mean, Raptor Paddock, one of the smallest maps in the game, is great for a fighter that says, hey, I don't like running, I want to go in, let's fight. And it's a pretty solid choice for Achilles to take here into Bigfoot, because Achilles is one of those fighters, a fighter that just goes in, and once Patroclus goes down, he's hitting you hard. It is interesting that the Secret Passages maps were the bans. I understand the perspective. You could potentially be thinking, I don't want Achilles to hide behind Patroclus in one of the passages and stay away, and that kind of tells you that Bigfoot, per usual in what you do against Achilles, wants to target Achilles primarily. Now, Achilles on Raptor Paddock is able to position himself in multiple ways. He's able to try and trap the opponent into what is called the pit in the competitive scene, and it allows Achilles to potentially keep Bigfoot trapped in there unless Bigfoot has some sort of movement effect that allows him to get out of that position, such as skirmish or hoax.
So lucky for Bigfoot, he does have plenty of those movement effects that can let him move through opposing fighters. So I think the pit is not too much of a concern from him, but you never know. Sometimes if the card draw is not going your way, you can get put into a little bit of a bad spot if you're not careful. So definitely something for both players to keep in mind throughout this game. But I do think it's a favorable map for Achilles here because he's able to aggress with a move 4 center map here like Raptor Paddock. So should be pretty easy for him to keep up the pressure and the damage output. But then again, Bigfoot is able to get his ability pretty easily as well with a lot of hard zone cutoffs. So we'll see what happens. It's definitely going to be an interesting match, and this could determine a lot about how the overall match is going to go, because I think Yanenga will have somewhat of a good time against Bigfoot, but you got to get there first. So players are ready. Let's jump on into Vorpal board and see what happens for Game 2, mplaza versus PhantomX, as the Achilles takes on the Bigfoot.
Are you guys ready for an absolute slugfest? Because I am.
Yeah, these fighters are definitely going to be saying, I'm tossing a 6 at you. No, I'm tossing a 6 at you. It just depends who is going to take it better.
Yeah,
and
be a
we've
lot of
got
sixes.
two big fighters that like to slug at each other, and neither of them have any healing in their decks. So pretty much the big swings that you take are permanent, unlike what we had earlier with Winter Soldier, who can heal back up rather easily.
It's kind of funny that Achilles has a heal, but no healing in his deck.
Very true.
Now, Bigfoot is the fighter I was a bit concerned about getting locked out of the match, so this will be really interesting to see how he can handle the Achilles matchup, because it's quite an even matchup. I've played it many times before myself from the Bigfoot end, and every time I feel very uncomfortable. I never feel like I'm in a great spot. It's always coming down to the very end and can hinge on a few key combat interactions. Like if you hit big into a helm, it can feel really bad and things can go south pretty quickly. So I feel like it's just a very volatile matchup, and that's kind of Achilles as a fighter in general, just very volatile based on his ability and how that works. So this could definitely go either way here.
Yeah. I could definitely see Bigfoot's ability, just that optional side on it, being such a huge thing against Achilles. Because when you get into Achilles starting to draw through his deck, Bigfoot can choose if he wants to continue using that ability or not. And so just that optional ability for Bigfoot is just so huge.
Definitely.
Especially since Achilles is a fighter who typically wants to hit you and hit you and hit you and try to get rid of all the defenses that you have in hand. But Bigfoot, on the other hand, does have quite a few things to block with. I mean, we've mentioned Hoax previously. It's one of the best cards in the game. It is one of the best defenses in the game, because not only is it a 4, which is a great block in general, but it also allows Bigfoot to step away up to 5 spaces, moving through opposing fighters. So if Patroclus and Achilles even try to pin Bigfoot and get him stuck, he can just break free from that easily. But he also has other things. He has six fours. He has 3 skirmishes in addition to his 3 hoaxes. The skirmish also allowing that if he wins the combat, he can move either one of the fighters in combat up to 2 spaces. And on top of that, he has Just Your Imagination, which is a 3-value defense that cancels all card effects on the opposing fighter. So if Angry Achilles comes out after Patroclus is defeated and he tosses in a test for weakness like, hey, I got +2 on these double attacks that are about to toss at you, Just Your Imagination says, no, you don't. In fact, you don't have anything. And that's the end of your attack.
That is true, though it is still risky going into a potential 6. So those are the kind of, the coin flips that I mentioned that really determine this matchup. And it's funny, too, because you have more feints than normal characters do to stop the Patroclus effects like we see here, so that Pat can't kill himself off easily. But then again, you have so many big attacks that it's hard to avoid the Helm. So Helm is easier to trigger in this matchup than most, but the Pat attacks are more difficult. So it kind of balances itself out in that regard.
Sea of Horns come out very early on. That's pretty solid for Bigfoot here, as Jackalope Horns deals the damage onto Achilles, and Bigfoot and Jackalope seem to be stepping back here, allowing Achilles to potentially move in, maybe have Patroclus move in if he's willing to boost, and see if Achilles is willing to toss more Patroclus cards at Bigfoot. Try to get as many as they can. It's kind of what sidekicks do in this game. Sidekicks, they want to try and find their specific unique cards that only they can use, and try to use as many as they possibly can before they are defeated.
Yeah, and Jackalope being one of the most useful sidekicks in the game. Jackalope Horns being a very powerful card, and then paired with those large number of innies that John was talking about during the look at Bigfoot. We've got 2 very different types of sidekicks here. One that's just very strong, and one that is literally made to die.
That is true, Jeremy. That's a great point. The one is made to die, the other is made to survive.
2 sides of the spectrum. See Bigfoot taking the tri-zone here. A couple spaces away from center stage, I believe, but tri-zone in general and Raptor Paddock is a solid space to be in because you have access to both sides of the pit very easily, and if you're a ranged fighter, you have access to the entire pit, covering all of the brown, blue, and gray spaces.
I do like this move by mplaza just backing off, seeing that he can force the initiative on Bigfoot, seeing as Bigfoot had 6 cards in hand at the beginning, so he has to approach or just overdraw, and then mplaza was able to also take center stage with Achilles here at the same time. So I do like that play backing off instead of rushing in unnecessarily. But we're going to see a regroup discarded as a boost for Bigfoot to come up and throw an attack into Achilles. Now, those regroups can be very good in baiting out the Helms, so we'll see here if a Helm comes out into a big attack, and that can definitely swing the game.
I mean, it could be part of the mind game, right? You see him boost with a regroup. You're like, well, surely this isn't the second regroup, right?
Wow. And it is.
Talk about timing.
Although it wasn't a Helm, it is still a skirmish, which, again, is one of the best cards in the deck for Achilles to block with, because it does not have that downside that the Achilles heel has, and it's still a 4-value block, one of the precious few. So, great interaction here for Phantom. mplaza does get the movement, though.
A solid card all around. I mean, everybody that has skirmish in their deck, you're like, that's a really good card.
Yes.
Are going to see Bigfoot get pushed into the pit. I imagine Phantom has either a hoax or a crash to deal with it, but if he doesn't, Pat could be in there and just start wailing on him for a while.
Yeah,
and
this
that's the
could
thing.
be dangerous.
That's the thing about Bigfoot. Like, yes, you're aware that he has a lot of options to move through opposing fighters, and he can get out of the pit very easily, but just because he has many doesn't mean he has an infinite amount. If he runs out of hoaxes and crash and even skirmish late in the game and he gets trapped in the pit later on, that can be very, very scary for Bigfoot very quickly.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Bigfoot only has 15 defenses. Yes.
Something like that, right? He's got the 6 fours. He's got the 5 cancels. That makes 11. He's got the 3 shifts, which would make 14.
Yes, it is 15 looking through the deck here, and 3 of those 15 being regroups.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if we can regroup.
Yeah, regroup is not not really a defense when it's only 1 value and hurts you more than it helps in fatigue.
Yeah.
So
And it's also fairly easy for Achilles to position one of his fighters in the same zone as Bigfoot to keep him from being able to use his ability while he is in the pit.
Which is likely why we see Achilles stepping onto that duo zone space there, just to ensure that Bigfoot is not allowed to use his ability. Bigfoot's ability being one of the more simpler abilities says, at the end of your turn, if there are no opposing fighters in your zone, you may draw 1 card. Might seem very basic compared to other abilities, but it can be extremely useful if the player using Bigfoot knows when to use it.
yeah, and we've seen Phantom use it a couple of times already in this game here. It shows that he knows he's probably not winning a long game because Achilles' damage output just skyrockets after Pat dies off, and on a map so small such as Raptor Paddock, Achilles is going to be able to reach Bigfoot. And Phantom knows that, so he's like, I'm just going to keep up the card draw, I'm going to keep up the pressure and the aggression, hold the tempo, and just try to keep smacking Achilles until he crumbles.
Yep, and we see a very patient game playing out so far. Both of the fighters here not sure when to step in, when to not. They're deciding it very carefully. They're being very cautious. Typically, you see them building up their hands before they go back in because they know that if they make one wrong move, the other one can capitalize on it and absolutely smash them.
Yeah, this is looking a little scary for Achilles, already down from 18 to 12 health very early with only 1 horns used, no logs used. That was a huge interaction, the savagery right there into the battle hardened, dealing 3 damage over the top. Now mplaza debating on what he wants to take back into his hand with the battle hardened. You got to expect he wanted the spear throw that was used the previous turn, but he might, yeah, forced to take the skirmish, which not super surprising here. He's going to need all the health he can get at this point.
Here's an interesting thing to note. We could potentially see Bigfoot holding on to any opposing fighter movement cards, as previously mentioned, to wait until to see if he can bait Achilles into going into the pit with him by going into that going to a corner spot or to a spot where it forces Achilles to really want to have to get in there if he wants to attack or use a high boost valued card. We could potentially see Achilles going in at some point, and if he does, Bigfoot could use like a hoax or a crash of the trees to completely reverse the situation on him, put himself on the outskirts of the pit, and block Bigfoot or block Achilles into the pit. Which is likely why we are seeing Achilles elect to like stay surrounding the pit and not go inside, knowing that Bigfoot will likely have some sort of opposing fighter movement and he'll be holding on to it until he can get that right opportunity.
It's interesting with this move here with Pat that he has, at least for the moment, opened up the exit to the pit there.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that because I really liked the position he was in holding Pat at the doorway of the pit because Bigfoot only has 2 schemes crashing through the trees that can actually get him out without combat engagement. And so if he wanted to use a skirmish or a hoax or a disengage to get out of the pit, he'd have to be attacking into Patroclus, and Patroclus wants to die off. So I'm just really surprised that he would, lose that opportunity, that good commanding spot he was holding to come after Jackalope.
Looks
here.
like he is getting the action gain there. We'll see if that was part of his plan. That's a risky move with all the cancels that Bigfoot has. And most people wanting to throw cancels into Pat anyway to keep Pat from killing himself.
I think I actually understand what mplaza was going for. Because his hand size is very low compared to Bigfoot's right now. If Bigfoot had a hoax and you went into attack with the Pat, Bigfoot could potentially hoax up to Achilles and get a double attack, which would be absolutely devastating at the moment.
That is true, though. He did throw a Brothers in Arms, which Achilles could have thrown into the Jackalope as well, and still held Pat at the entrance of the pit to block Bigfoot in. So we're going to see Jackalope throw a shift here, dealing 1 damage over the skirmish. And Phantom debating on his ability or not. If I'm Phantom, I want to see him keep using the ability constantly because he definitely has the tempo right now, and you just want to keep it up. And he does take the card draw.
I see no reason not to. You've already committed to it. You're in a very good spot right now to just keep up the tempo.
Yep.
No point holding back now, especially with Patroclus still alive. Achilles doesn't have his card draw when he wins combat, and he doesn't have +2 in attack either. So unless a helm comes soon against potentially a larger than life or something, Bigfoot is able to comfortably just continue to draw. Yes, he puts himself a little lower in deck count, but it also allows him to be a little more aggressive onto Achilles early on, which could be very useful if Achilles doesn't get any of those helms.
Yeah, we haven't seen much of Pat's cards come out yet, so he may just not be drawing those. Because a lot of times that will determine when you end up bringing Pat out.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, right? Because if you don't get your Pat cards early and then Pat goes down, yeah, you still get your ability active and you still got your +2, but later on those cards are going to come back and they might all come in like a stack together, and you're just going to be drawing cards that you can't use back to back to back to back, and that gets really scary for Achilles because the more cards that he has of Pat in his hand, the scarier it gets because he has less to defend with, less to attack with, and less to use in general.
Yeah, and I believe both players did mulligan at the start, so mplaza was probably looking for those Pat cards and maybe just didn't get lucky enough to find them.
Also, just think Phantom has been controlling the pace of the match from the very first turn incredibly well. Achilles has been down in hand size the entire time, and so it's difficult to justify going in when you know that Bigfoot could potentially just drop 2 6s on you right then and there.
Yeah, exactly, Alex. And that's why I love Bigfoot, because of his, option. That card draw just lets you go so aggressive and really put pressure on your opponent when you need to. It's definitely not something to be used in every matchup or in every game, but based on the game state, it can put you in a very commanding spot because it's just that strong of an ability. And we're seeing it come into play here. Turn 1, he was able to just go in and attack and still keep hand advantage over mplaza here. And yeah, it just makes it very scary for mplaza to go in to attack.
See Achilles covering up the pit here once again. I'd be curious to see if Bigfoot elects to chill out in the pit despite being at 7-card hand count, or maybe if he has access to it, use one of those crashes, get through Pat, and swing again at Achilles, who's hiding behind Patroclus right now. Or alternatively, Bigfoot decides to cover his losses and go into Patroclus and toss some sort of attack, potentially that third regroup. Maybe to bait out some sort of defense that Patroclus might toss, or Patroclus trying to take himself out alongside Bigfoot. But instead we see Bigfoot step away deeper into the pit and Jackalope approaching Patroclus with an attack.
A little bit surprising to see Jack willingly attack Patroclus here.
I could see this being a disengage.
Yeah. That seems reasonable. If Pat just takes it, you'll kill him off, but you get to jump to the opposite side of the map. Force Achilles to lose 2 cards and then have to boost in to attack you, where you are likely just to hoax out right? But that might be a good opportunity for mplaza to throw a double attack on Bigfoot, knowing that Bigfoot's going to want to get out of that pit.
Achilles is 15 cards down in deck and has only managed to deal a total of 4 damage to all of Phantom's fighters, which is not the kind of place you want to be in. Of course, Achilles is Achilles and can always make up that damage, but I don't know, things are looking a little sketchy at the moment, especially with this going exactly the way Phantom wanted to.
Yeah, although we've only seen one cancel used from Bigfoot, and those are what you really want to throw into all of Pat's attacks, and you have plenty of them to stop the self-damage. So to see Pat going down here with so many cancels remaining is pretty okay for Achilles, because Bigfoot doesn't really want to use the cancels anymore, because you don't want to throw him into a massive value attack. But once again, these discards going pretty well for Phantom, hitting Test for Weakness, one of the best cards, and a Wily Fighting is pretty good as well, almost like a pseudo 6. So
Yeah,
Also,
definitely.
With Pat gone, that means no more helms, and Bigfoot has not used a single log.
yeah, so with 3 logs, that can deal 6 damage, and 2 more horns, that means Bigfoot, just by playing out his deck, can nearly defeat Achilles right here. So that's if everything is max value blocked. If one single log is not max value blocked, then Phantom has guaranteed lethal just by pulling off all of those cards. So Jack just needs to survive, and Bigfoot just needs to find his logs. So mplaza is on the clock here big time, and he needs to make some moves and at least make Bigfoot a little bit concerned about his health total so that he can, you know, get a little bit of breathing room and force Bigfoot to stop being so aggressive.
Calling back to that play that you had mentioned earlier of taking out Patroclus with disengage and forcing Achilles to have to boost into Bigfoot if he really wants to attack him, we could potentially see that right now, which would, if that happens, that would allow Bigfoot to block with a hoax and move to the other side of the pit and block Achilles in. No more helm means that he cannot switch out with Patroclus and have Patroclus take the hit for him, and I believe his only 2 options to escape the pit would be Hermes and Skirmish.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you defend with Hermes, that's not a max value block. So if it's into a log, well, you just gave Phantom what he needs for the eventual lethal. And if it's a skirmish, you're not winning on defense against a log. You're going to have to attack with the skirmish. And even though Bigfoot will take a big chunk of damage, he still has plenty of cancels if he wants to keep Achilles trapped in the pit like that. And that could be very bad, because then Jackalope will easily stay alive and find those horns that are necessary. Oh my gosh, having to boost with a Test for Weakness too is absolutely brutal.
That is very concerning.
You see Phantom smiling in the camera there. He knows, like, he's happy about that one.
Yeah. That tells me that Achilles does not have that many options if he was forced to boost with a Test for Weakness after already losing another with the abilities discard.
Yeah.
And we see a cancel here. Ooh, going into a Brothers in Arms, which basically doesn't have an effect anymore now that Patroclus is defeated. So it's just going to be 3 outright damage onto Bigfoot, and Achilles will draw a card with his ability.
Yeah, if he's boosting with a Test for Weakness, it means that
Oh my gosh.
those Patroclus cards are going to be showing up again later on, because he clearly didn't have one of those in his hand.
We see the first larger-than-life connect into a feint that is likely worst-case scenario, but then we see the other worst-case scenario as larger-than-life connects into under Achilles' helm, dealing Achilles over half of the amount of health that he had left. 8 total damage in 2 attack actions. This is why you conserve the larger-than-life after Patroclus goes down.
Definitely. Yep, smart play by Phantom, holding on to those logs. Just throwing them as soon as Achilles is forced to come in at you. I mean, Achilles dealing some damage back, but it's just looking so rough because there are still 2 Jackalope horns that can easily just win Phantom the game without even having to engage anymore.
Horns into shift is just guaranteed lethal now.
You're right. Yep.
That's just, oh man, Bigfoot's gonna be blocking up the pit too. Just, Yeah, this is grim.
You see Achilles step back deeper into the pit. Unfortunately, as you have mentioned, John, 2 Jackalope horns remain, and that would deal a total of 4 damage to Achilles, who has no healing, no outs. The second Phantom gets those 2 horns, this game is done.
Yeah, and with Bigfoot standing at the entrance of the pit and also being in a different zone than Achilles can possibly get in, it's going to be so easy for him to just turbo out his ability. I think mplaza, if you had anything at all to attack with, no matter what it is on that previous turn, I think you should have just went in, made an attack. Because you can't afford any amount of time. Phantom is just going to turbo through the deck, no worries, find the horns and win the game.
See him willingly break the pin in the pit. Potentially might not have defenses that he's comfortable with against Angry Achilles, enough for him to willingly stand there. Other than that reason, I don't see why he would not stay on the pit. That was such a comfortable spot, because it forces Achilles to have to interact with Bigfoot, allowing Jackalope to stay alive and keep hunting for those horns. While here, Achilles could boost in if he was willing, and with a helm, and reach Jackalope.
Okay, he's got Bigfoot down to 6.
Health differential is always an important stat.
I mean, without max value block, Bigfoot would die in 2 6-value attacks, right? If he only has cancels, but there's plenty of cancels remaining. You've got to imagine that he's going to have at least something. There's the first horns.
First horns. Bigfoot down, or Achilles down to 1 health. If that second horns comes out, it's it. And Bigfoot now has a lethal larger, I believe.
Yep, and
Yes.
shift as well. Plenty of
And
options.
shift, that's correct.
They're just going through the motions right now.
See Achilles
Very
boosting with Save Your
slim.
Doom.
Yeah,
Very
there's
slim
not a
chance.
whole lot else to do here.
Achilles boosting with Day of Your Doom, likely spelling out his own doom as he attacks with Skirmish, and Bigfoot immediately attacks afterward, likely a lethal larger here,
That is it.
and that closes out the game.
Wow, what an aggressive game. Let's listen in on the players, see what they have to say.
Yo, you will give them before or later. It just was later.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, yeah, sooner or later.
I don't know.
Well, it seems Achilles doesn't like you.
Yeah. Obviously, the turn in the pit was the big turning point, but I mean, at that point, Pat wasn't doing it. Like, I felt like I had to go on the aggressive because you had so much health. Jackalope still had 5 health.
Yeah. Well, I was drawing so much cards you can't aggress me. Actually, I think you should fuck up. But actually, I didn't have my schemes at all. Like my second scheme was 9 cards. Like,
Yeah, I wanted more than I saw 1 pack card while he was alive. I wanted to try to use the pack cards to take out Jackalope, but that didn't really work.
well, I had all of Steens. You mostly want to use them just to use some cards, just to attack.
Yeah.
By the way, I know the reason why Achilles doesn't like you, because you kill Pat so often, so early.
Yeah. I feel like in the Winter Soldier game, if I just killed him off as early as possible, I could.
All right, and there we have it. I mean, PhantomX is going to be moving on to the grand finals, which will be hosted on the same channel tomorrow, and with a decisive 2-0 victory over mplaza. So I'm a little shocked to see such a quick 2-0 victory, but I mean, he's proven, you know, Phantom has proven time and time again how good of a player he is. He made it to the top 8 in the last 2 previous tournaments, I believe it was. And those were his first 2 tournaments I believe he entered. And I know he is a big part of a competitive Unmatched scene overseas as well. And so he's definitely not a new player by any means, but you know, he's just consistently placing high and showing why he deserves to have this top spot. And though I do think it was a little bit of unfortunate draw from mplaza, I think it was still really well played on both ends, and especially Phantom knowing how to capitalize on that unfortunate series of events for mplaza, and that really shows the mark of a good player. So, Angel, what are your thoughts about that match overall? I mean, was that faster than you expected it to go, or what?
I mean, Phantom, as you mentioned, is a very recognized player in the competitive scene. Very respectable fighter. Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
definitely.
But I do also want to tip my hat to mplaza, because not only did you make it to semifinals in Summer of Legends, but you played very, very well despite the hands Achilles was giving him. And even though that game did close out the second game with Achilles going down, Bigfoot was brought down to 4 health, and it wasn't entirely over, I don't think, until the very last moment, because it's angry Achilles. If Achilles gets one big hit on Bigfoot, Bigfoot could have gone down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really depends on the card draw. You sit there and say, well, he had plenty of big value blocks left and this and that, but there's a world where you just don't have what you needed, right? They could be bottom 5 cards, literally the 5 cards that you need, right? All your remaining hoaxes and skirmishes, and that log or that jackalope horns, right? Could have been like the bottom. He had 8 cards left in deck. It could have been the bottom 8, and you never know. So you always just have to play to your outs and play till the very end and do everything in your power to give you the best chance at victory, because it's never over until that health dial hits 0. So yeah, really well done.
Exactly.
On both sides. How about you guys, Jeremy or Alex? Anything to say about that last game or that match overall, really?
Well, we had talked that we knew that was going to be a game of 2 guys just throwing big numbers at each other and slugging. That is what ended up happening there. And the big guys slugging at each other tend to be pretty quick games. So that is definitely what we got there. But yeah, just Bigfoot seeming very early to have the upper hand the whole way through, and Achilles partially from card draw not really going his way, just having a really rough time most of the game.
Yeah, and that's just how Achilles is as a fighter. I always say he's one of the most volatile fighters, just because he relies so much on finding those pat cards early, not just the pat specific attacks, but the helms as well. And the random discards that happen when pat goes down can be game breaking. So he's just really volatile, but he is still a very popular fighter, one of the most picked in the tournament so far, and one of the highest win rates, I believe, as well. So, overall, he's doing very well for himself in the tier list here. So, surprising a little bit to see him go down twice to both Winter Soldier and Bigfoot. So he was the weak link in the lineup, but like I said, he's volatile. It just is how it is sometimes. But how about you, Alex? Any final thoughts on this game or the match in general?
I absolutely have to give my compliments to Phantom. Both games were absolute masterclasses in aggression. The entire time he was leveraging a massive hand disparity to control the tempo and just prevent mplaza from ever going in with Achilles, because if he did, he knew the threat of the counterattack was too much. So Achilles has to run, and Phantom keeps up the aggression, and he just gets caught in that same cycle. It was absolutely incredible to watch, and mplaza put up a fantastic fight in response to that.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a tough battle to fight there. But, still making it to the top 4 is really impressive, and especially, I think maybe this is only his second tournament, so that's really, really well done overall. So Phantom is deserving, to go on to the finals, and so we're going to have to see who he goes up against. Later today, we'll be having the other semifinal match, which will be myself, actually, versus TDC Jason, and that'll be fun. It'll be a rematch for me, because I have played against Jason in the very, very first tournament that Unmatched ever had, at least our, official tournaments, the premier tournament, and Jason beat me back in the day. So I'm ready to get my revenge against him and face Phantom in the grand finals. But we'll see what happens later on today in that second semifinal. I'm looking forward to it. But I gotta say, with this match, I'm a little sad that we didn't get to see Yananga, because that's one of my favorite fighters, probably my #1 favorite, and Big One, best fighter in the game, as we all know. But we didn't get to see her come out. But maybe later we'll see a little bit of Yananga action. But I am happy to see Bigfoot get the win, because he's my boy too. So gotta shout out to Biggie. But we are going to be getting the players on for some interviews as well. So don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to start off by getting mplaza in for an interview whenever he is ready. And then, of course, we'll interview Phantom as well. And Phantom could be the first non-US trophy winner. So he's one match away. So we're going to see what happens with that tomorrow. It's very exciting times for the world of competitive Unmatched. Oh, looks like we are... Looks like we are switching it up a little bit. We're actually going to interview Phantom first, I guess, because there is quite a bit of time difference here. Overseas, it's quite late, I believe, for him. So I guess we're going to get him on first, so then he can go, you know, get some rest for tomorrow, and then we'll be getting mplaza on as well. So just stand by for the interviews in just a moment. Jeremy, I'm loving your background. You got all the Unmatched boxes up there?
Yeah, they're all mostly empty now that I've finally got the storage solution.
Oh yeah, show that off.
Got them all out of that, so that's why these are all empty. Well, except for that guy, because Rex doesn't, you know, fit in there particularly well. But
I'm loving
everybody else.
Those battle boxes you got there with the colorful designs, the blue and the orangish yellow. Those are really nice looking.
The kaleidoscope. The kaleidoscope battle boxes are pretty wild. It's fun every time I stare at them. I like find another fighter hidden in there in the design somewhere.
Yeah, so. Very cool designs. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know about that stuff, Restoration did a what was it? A game found, I believe, some kind of backing campaign for the storage solution, which had those battle boxes that we can see in Jeremy's background that hold these boost cubes, and the boost cubes are little clear kind of plastic boxes right there that hold the fighters and the decks. You can fit at least two decks in there with the minis and the dials and the decks all combined in there. So really nice storage for all this wonderful gaming content. And
yeah,
I believe the campaign is over, but they were going to put up any additional stock like for sale on their website, and I believe they plan on maybe running some more of those campaigns in the future. So definitely look out for that, because there's tons of great stuff you can get, not just the boost cubes and the battle boxes, but also there's like a go bag to bring along your boxes over to a friend's house, or there's the travel bag as well that kind of holds some of the boost cubes if you're going maybe to an in-person tournament. And there's like the rubber mats as well for the maps, the roll-up maps. So those are really nice. And there's the really sweet coin that you can get with the mulligan and keep and leader follower and first and second, or all that good stuff on the two sides of the coin. So just a lot of really, really nice product there. So definitely check it out if you're interested. But it looks like we are good to go with Phantom here for an interview. So let's get him in here. And all right, Phantom, welcome. Congrats on your big win. How you feeling after that match?
Oh yeah, I'm quite glad, because my first time getting into grand finals now. Yeah, the match was quite fun. Maybe not as not as unpredictable as the last game I had with Bjorn. Because there it was like until last interaction nobody knew who would win. Here it was like in the middle of the game, probably both of us already knew.
Yeah.
So not as surprising, but still quite a few good games.
Yeah, definitely great games. And we were talking about especially how after your match with Bjorn in that Winter Soldier and Achilles matchup that you did, where you tried to play very defensively and that didn't work out, we saw a complete shift in this game here versus mplaza, where you just went super aggressive as Winter Soldier and you just kept throwing sixes, and you were like, okay, I don't care if I kill off Pat, I'm gonna kill you. And that shift in gameplay was just really cool to watch.
Yeah, that happens when Winter Soldier gets down to real low health. So I just was like, when I noticed that Pat, when I saw that Pat died so early and I had like pretty low health, I was like, that's my only chance. So I like shuffled 2 sixes and I started just throwing them at the opponent. And I had a really good turn with like double scheme that was like the game changer, and also both games Achilles didn't get real good defenses, so my healing worked also 2 times, which was huge.
Yeah, definitely. But, good on you for recognizing the situation, knowing your win condition, being like, well, okay, I'm not going to win the long game because I'm too low already and Achilles is enraged. So I got to just kill you first. And good, recognizing that win condition, and you followed through and it worked out. So congrats on the big win. And congrats on making, the grand finals. You have the chance to be the first non-US trophy winner. So you're one match away, and that will be a best of 5, so a little bit of a marathon match. But I'm sure you'll do great.
I never tried best of 5 in this format before, so probably today all day I'll have to practice.
Yeah. Well, what time is it for you now?
Time it's 5 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not bad. Okay. I thought it was later, but yeah. Okay, you got the rest of the night to practice, and that'll definitely pay off, I'm sure, because I don't think anybody honestly has practiced for the best of 5. I know I haven't, so probably nobody has, because
I have some ideas.
Do you?
What to pick? Some bombs.
Okay, well, you don't want to give that away just yet. We'll save the surprise for tomorrow. But that's really cool. I'm looking forward to that. So congrats once again. But I want to just open it up to the other commentators. Does anybody have any particular questions for Phantom here?
Not so much a question, but I would like to say I completely and entirely respect the playstyles that you brought today with Winter Soldier and Bigfoot. Those are 2 fighters that people typically look at and they're like, all right, I'm going to get ready, I'm going to run away, I'm going to be defensive. No, you said, I have 6s, I have 4s, I am going to go in and I am going to punch you and you're going to have to deal with it. And I completely respected that. So props to you for that, and you definitely deserve your spot at Grand Finals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, when the first game started, even before, I was like, okay, I don't have high chances to win as Winter Soldier against Achilles because I think it's still Achilles' favorite. So I was like, okay, I'll win afterwards with Winter Soldier into Yen, but it turned out pretty great for me. So we didn't play this match. We wanted to play it for a long time on stream to show everybody how bad it can be for Yen, but maybe next time.
Maybe next time. How about you, Alex or Jeremy? Any questions for Phantom or any comments?
I think Angel had kind of touched on pretty much the same thing that I had. Just coming on, just going with particularly Winter Soldier, going with an atypical play style. Bigfoot, while people do run away, he is still someone that can be used aggressively quite often. But an aggressive Winter Soldier is a very different way of seeing that character used, and it's always very nice to see just how versatile some of these fighters can be used in different manners than what you typically think of them being used when they need to.
Definitely.
I hope Lom is proud of me as the most famous Winter Soldier enjoyer.
Oh, I'm sure he's very proud of you for that one. That was an excellent display of how Winter Soldier can go aggressive. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch. I'm sure, you put on a great show for the viewers. I'm sure everybody loved seeing the aggressive playstyle in both games, as Angel and Jeremy had pointed out. So very, very fun match there. How about you, Alex? Anything you have for Phantom? Any questions or last comments?
I echo the sentiment that all the other commentators have. Your Winter Soldier game was the coolest game of Winter Soldier I have ever seen. Props to you for that one. It was absolutely incredible to watch. Although I do have one question. In the Bigfoot game, we heard that you banned the passageway maps. Could we hear your reasoning for that one?
Well, pretty obvious, because Pat can cover Achilles and then I'll have to attack Pat, and sometimes can be very bad. Also on Solomon's, Pat can cover not only in the space where there's only one path, but also there's this how to describe it, this corner where Pat can also cover, and if I don't have a scheme for Jackalope or for Bigfoot, I also won't be able to reach Achilles, so that was the main reason. And I have experience playing on small maps like Hero Road or Raptor Paddock against Achilles as Bigfoot, so I was quite okay with them. That was the reason.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
So it was more so about the corners that Pat could block Achilles into rather than the passageways themselves. more about the defensive aspects of those maps. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's a great call. I kind of expected Raptor Paddock, maybe or Herot to be banned, or Sanctum, but as you mentioned, if you're comfortable and you've practiced playing on those maps, then good on you for taking those bans for some more possible problematic maps. So yeah, really well done. I do want to ask, how did you feel about your draft after you guys ended up with 2 fighters each? Because I thought that Bigfoot might have actually gotten locked out of the match there, having trouble getting a win against Yen and Achilles. I thought you were probably on the losing end of the draft, in my opinion, but how did you feel about it afterwards?
I was happy with my draft. I was happy with Soldier, which I was sure I would get a win against Yen, and some chance to win against Achilles and Bigfoot. Yeah, against Yen, I would say it's a little bit Yen favorite, but I still know how to play it. I tried to put Bigfoot, but the plan was to put Bigfoot on my map advantage, to not give Yen map, and that's really huge in this matchup. And yeah, so I was happy with my draft. Maybe not the best one, but pretty alright.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously worked out just fine. So once again, congrats to you on moving on to the grand finals. But is there anything you want to say to the viewers before you go?
I hope every other European Unmatched player were happy that I now proceed to the grand finals, and I hope I'll win it for you and get that trophy to Europe.
That's right. You could be the first, make history. So, but either way, regardless of what happens, Phantom, I mean, you're a great player, a great member of the community. So thank you for playing, and good luck in your match tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, and then we have mplaza here as well, joining us for an interview. So, mplaza, unfortunately, you didn't get the win, but you played really well, and you made it to the top 4 out of 112 players, consisting of the best players in the world. So, really impressive tournament run overall. But, I mean, overall, how are you feeling about making it this far?
I made it a lot further than I expected to be completely honest. Coming into the tournament, my goal was just to try to get that 3rd spot in the pool and move on. So I was talking with Phantom and Darkwave before the game. I didn't even have myself this far in my own bracket, so was quite happy to make it to Final 4. I don't know. I feel like I definitely got better over the course of the tournament, and so, I mean, if you had offered me top 4 at the start of the tournament, I would have taken it in a heartbeat, so can't be too upset. Obviously, these games did not go particularly well, but in the macro sense, I felt like it was a successful tournament.
Oh, yeah, big time. And it's great to hear you mention how you got better throughout the course of the tournament, because I definitely think that happens a lot, because a lot of times your first tournament or so, you don't really know what to expect with competitive Unmatched if you're totally new to it, and you learn a lot along the way. And, I mean, is this your first or second tournament?
This is my second one. I played in the Winter Champions, but didn't make it out of pool play there. So this is my first time actually advancing.
Okay, so you made a huge leap then, from not making it out of pools to making it to the top 4. That's just really impressive, and obviously you've improved a lot between now and then. So good stuff there.
Yeah, I think that over the course of the tournament, I was also able to learn more about the new fighters, because I've tried to watch the streams, watch videos, but I haven't had a ton of time to actually play games. I was thinking the other day, I think between Winter Champions and now, I played 7 or 8 games before the season started, so didn't really have any experience with any of the last 3 Marvel fighters. Like that Winter Soldier game, that was the second game I've ever played involving Winter Soldier.
Wow.
And so over time, through the tournament, watch the streams, I've kind of learned how they operate, stuff like that. Now, obviously, it's different when you're actually playing against them, or you're the one piloting them. But at least by watching other people play, I can kind of learn how they operate. So yeah, I played Widow in my last match. That was the first time I'd ever played in a game with Widow. Wow. So it was a lot of learning on the fly. So I was quite happy I was able to make it to this point.
Yeah, that's especially impressive, not having a ton of experience with those fighters. But like you said, if you're just involved in the tournament scene and you keep up with, the content, like watching the streams and reading some of the discussion that happens on Discord and just, chatting about the fighters and matchups with other players and whatnot, it helps out a lot. So there's a lot to be learned from just that whole experience. And I mean, you've shown how valuable that is. Making it to the top 4 is just super impressive once again. So really, really cool to see. But I do want to open it up to the other commentators. Any specific questions or comments for mplaza here?
I personally just want to say that I really, really like you're telling me right now, and I'm completely.
And Angel, I know you were in the middle of asking some questions here. So what did you have for Matt again?
Winner of Champions, it's over. This is a player that will be a threat. This is a player that I expect to be interviewing in the future. This is a player that people have to remember their name. And that's a great thing because previously, mplaza was likely, like you mentioned, likely a bit of the underdog here and wasn't really like compared to the other three players that are so prominent and like appear so consistently in the competitive scene, it wasn't really as known. But I think that this matchup here and just your tournament run in general proves that you are someone that needs to be known.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I'd love to be back here in the future. Kind of like you were saying, I was looking at like the rankings of the people in the top four. It was like 2, 5, 7, and then I was like 32. So I was definitely more of a bit of a Cinderella. But I think I was a little fortunate, at least in this game, in the sense that like Winter Soldier, I don't have a ton of experience against. But when it's Winter Soldier Achilles, it's pretty clear what needs to happen for Achilles to win. Like Winter Soldier's weakness, right, is just taking too much damage, dying before he can get to like just run infinite. And Achilles needs to hit as hard as possible. So I was a little fortunate there. I would have been more concerned about like a Winter Soldier Yananga game that was a little bit like more skill based and experience based. So I knew what I needed to do in that Winter Soldier to Achilles game. And I was on the right path. I was feeling great right about when Pat died. I had him down to 6 health. And then I went, I think, 9 or 10 draws without a defense over value 2, which was just brutal. I just kept drawing feints and then the helms. I would have even taken Battle Hardened to at least get like a skirmish back or something. So, because at that point I was less concerned about the 6s dealing me damage. I just wanted to prevent his healing, because if I could keep him down at 6, like I could get another spear throw back with Battle Hardened and just keep hitting with 6s over and over again. And I felt like I was in a good spot. But then, yeah, I think I took like 7 or 8 damage. Or no, there was the one turn where he healed 4 and I took 2 damage. And at that point, it felt like it was basically over. So that was definitely the turning point there.
The one thing I will say, and the one recommendation that I would make, once you sit down after this day, you sit down, you take out your Achilles mini, you say, hey man, we gotta talk, because that card order was not fun. That was not fair for you to do to me. And I really hope that Achilles will listen to you, because other than that, you played absolutely phenomenally. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Achilles is not somebody I play a ton of, to be honest. He seems super straightforward, but I feel like he's actually quite complex with when Pat dies and playing cards like that. And the Pat Bigfoot game is kind of, I was trying to avoid in this game like 50-50 matchups that are purely based on experience, because I know Phantom has far more experience than I do. So my goal was to try to avoid those 50-50 matchups, hopefully get a good draft that would set me up well, or just have some volatile fighters like Houdini or T-Rex that can win any matchup, because I felt like if it came down to a bunch of 50-50 games where you needed that knowledge of the matchup, it was going to be difficult. I think that kind of showed in the Achilles Bigfoot game. Now, I think that matchup comes down a lot to your experience with it and when to kill Pat. And my plan was to try to keep Pat alive for a little bit and then kill him off and start doing damage, but I didn't draw any of the Pat cards. And so without the Pat cards, Achilles can't really do any damage. And so I just wasn't going to be able to get anything through to Bigfoot and Jackalope. And so the turn in the pit was obviously what turned the whole game. I mean, it was still going poorly for me, but at that point it was basically over. But I felt like I needed to take a risk and play a little more aggressive, because I wasn't just going to be able to get through all of his health. So I was hoping to draw into one of my other defenses with winning the combat, but the curse of the 2 value defenses went into the second game as well. So I drew Battle Hardened. So I'm sure once he saw the feint with my first defense, he knew that I probably did not have the best blocks, and so taking 8 in one turn usually does not win you many games.
Yeah, that was definitely a brutal swing in the game for sure. But like you said, you got to flip the switch at some point and go aggressive. But I do want to echo what Angel said, about how impressive it is that you made top 4, not only just in your second tournament ever, but with lacking a lot of that fighter experience, like you said, because that can really separate, the good players from the great players. But you still managed to make top 4, so that just shows that like your fundamentals in the game, your basic understanding of things like tempo and initiative and the combat interactions and all this stuff, your solid fundamentals carried you to the top 4, even with a little bit lacking in the experience department. So just props to you as a player. So I hope that you'll come back in the future and make these people scared in your pools.
No,
You were
I'm
definitely born to be a legend.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Winter of Champions. I think that will be a ton of fun.
Awesome. You love to see it. But I'm going to open up to also Alex and Jeremy. Any questions or comments for Matt?
Well, I've got a question. Well, actually, someone else has a question. A particular someone on the Discord who sent me a message to ask you, and that is, what happened?
Yeah, I think that kind of falls into the 9 straight draws without the 2 value defense. That one went poorly, and then the Achilles Bigfoot game was on the back foot from the beginning. But I feel like that was the quickest match I played throughout the entire tournament, because when Achilles is running hot and dying soon, it usually wraps up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think either way, right, it's going to be a pretty quick game. When Pat goes down, Achilles is either going to kill you or he's going to get killed. And unfortunately, this time, Achilles got killed. But yeah, it is what it is. Still well played overall. But anything else from any of the commentators?
I actually had a question. So, we were looking over your stats before this game started, and we saw, I believe you had 7 recorded T-Rex games this tournament. I was a little surprised to not see her come out. Did Phantom maybe ban her in the pre-bans?
No, she made it through the bans. I debated taking her with the last pick. I think it was Achilles or T-Rex. So I debated taking T-Rex, but it didn't feel like it fit super well. I'm trying to remember who he had even picked. He had Winter Soldier. I guess Winter Soldier was his last pick, so I didn't know that at the time. He had Luke, he had Bigfoot, and he had
Moon Knight.
Yeah, so I felt like Achilles would have been in a decent spot. I don't know, I've played a lot of T-Rex, but I also noticed that I think after some pool play in my first two brackets, the only games I had lost were with T-Rex, so I was undefeated with everybody else. So I was like, yeah, I enjoy T-Rex, but I'm also losing with T-Rex, so it was kind of a 50-50 there. I don't know, maybe in retrospect I go with her just for a little bit more familiarity, because my other fighter I had was She-Hulk, and I've played her once ever, and that was a ladder game. And so I decided on Achilles over She-Hulk just because I had a little bit more experience with him. But I guess I could have probably pulled out T-Rex. I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen a ton of T-Rex from most of the top players. I feel like she kind of struggles with the split advantage. So I feel like in Arsenal I played her a lot. But I don't know, I didn't want to get kind of shoehorned into having to pick map in certain matchups, which I guess kind of happened anyway with Achilles. But I don't know, definitely something to consider is T-Rex. And going into Arsenal, I think T-Rex will kind of have a better place in Winter of Champions, so excited for that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said. T-Rex, you might have had a little bit more familiarity with her, but also on paper, I think Achilles was the better pick, but that's always the call you got to make, and it can be really tough at this level of play because experience can make a big difference, but, also there is a limitation to how much of a difference that'll make when it, if the matchup's really just unfavorable. So it's tough. It's a tough call to make.
Yeah, and I feel like when your opponent really knows what they're doing, like Phantom definitely does, T-Rex can be a little bit worse. Like if you can play around it well and position well to make it difficult, that makes it a little bit harder, which kind of let me lean Achilles. But I think either of them would have been pretty viable options in that last pick.
Yeah, I do agree. And like you mentioned too, with Arsenal, for the next tournament, most likely we'll be running Arsenal, and T-Rex is definitely much more of a threat there. At least if we keep the full advantage idea, because
Hmm.
split advantage definitely makes a big difference. And it's interesting to see too, on that note, how much of a difference the split advantage makes for certain fighters like that. Because in Arsenal, we did full advantage where that player would get the choice of their map and position combined. And so that really puts the opponent on the back foot and at a disadvantage right off the bat. But in split advantage, at least one player gets one half, one player gets the other. It's a little more even. So overall, I think it makes for more balanced games, but it definitely shifts the meta a little bit, which was interesting to see.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. But I think that just about wraps us up. But once again, congrats, Matt. And is there anything you want to say maybe to the viewers or anybody watching before you go?
I don't think so. This was a ton of fun. It was great meeting everybody I played against. I feel like I'll have some people to kind of practice with before the next tournament. So looking forward to that. Hopefully get some more experience heading into pool play for Winter Champions.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the biggest things. I think one of the most important is have a practice partner, because then you can grind certain matchups. You know, if you're unsure and you expect to run into a certain matchup, be like, okay, well, I play this character a lot, but I'm not sure how they play into this fight. Or be like, you know, call up your practice partner, say, hey, you want to test this matchup out, and you just grind it out and see how it works. And you can, it's not just playing the game, right? You can discuss how things are going throughout the game and certain interactions and decision points, and it really helps you become a better player. So definitely, you know, great to hear that you've met more people in the scene, and I'm sure you're going to come back even stronger in the next tourney. So love to have you back.
Yeah, hopefully, that's the plan.
Awesome. All right, Matt. Well, thanks again for putting up with all the production and everything. You will be getting a free set of your choice. I'll reach out to you later on about that. But congrats on your top 4. It was a pleasure having you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for setting this up. It's been a ton of fun.
Awesome, man. All right, take care.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for the first semifinal for Summer of Legends 2023. So PhantomX did get the 2-0 victory over mplaza. So he got the Bigfoot and the Winter Soldier wins over the Achilles. So Phantom's moving on to the grand finals, which will be tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m. Central Time. That's 10 a.m. Eastern. Go ahead and do your time conversions, but just message in the Discord and whatnot if you have any questions. But again, 9 a.m. Central U.S. time is the start for the grand finals tomorrow morning. That will be a best of 5 between PhantomX and, to be determined, either myself or TDC Jason. So obviously be there for that next upcoming semifinal match at 1 p.m. Central Time. It's roughly 10:30 a.m. Central Time right now. So we're looking at 2.5 hours from now, we will be starting up the next semifinal. So the stream will go down in between, but make sure you come back at that time, as we will go live at 1 p.m. Central. And I'm really looking forward to it. But a big thanks again to Restoration Games for making this incredible game Unmatched that we all love. It truly is unmatched, and them as a company are truly unmatched as well, because they're so supportive of the tournament scene and of everything, all the community run events and everything that everybody does in the community. They're just super supportive, and we love them for it. So big shout outs to Restoration Games and everybody on that team. Thanks to the guys at Vorpal Board who set this platform up, you know, for us to run these awesome streams. It works out great. So huge shout outs to them. And thanks to all you commentators for joining me in this semifinal event here. You know, it's a big time commitment to sit down and talk about Unmatched for hours on end, but you guys put up with it, and hopefully you enjoy it. But it's always a pleasure having you. So Angel, you know, is there anything you want to say to the viewers before you sign off here?
I mean, it was a complete blast. I personally just want to say, I think the most important thing about competitive scenes, as someone who has been in multiple before, is the community. Without the community, there is no competitive scene at all. And that's why, going off on what you said, Restoration is so supportive of the competitive scene that it shows. It shows in the battles, it shows in the people that you meet. Going off on what mplaza was saying about how he now has practice partners to train up with, my practice partner is right here on this call. And because of that, we're able to grow together and improve together and become better, not just in Unmatched, but as people. And it's all about that connection to me. And I think that that's so important for competitive scenes and just life in general. I mean, we're all here to enjoy ourselves, right? So I think that is just something. It makes me really happy. It made me really happy when mplaza was saying it too. It shows that someone who was in their second tournament ever in Unmatched is already connecting with people and already growing within our very, very well community.
Yeah, very well said. The community here is top notch. So anybody who's curious or, kind of on the edge, looking to get into Unmatched or the competitive scene in general, I highly recommend trying it out. Everybody is just such great people. So I'm sure you'll have fun. You'll make, new friends and improve along the way. And it's just a great, fun thing to be a part of. So I'm really thankful for the community that we've built here. And I hope it keeps growing to be bigger and bigger and, better in the future. So yeah, very well said, Angel. So again, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you.
It's been an honor to be here.
All right, thank you. And then Alex, how about you, man? Thank you again for, joining in on the commentary. And is there anything you want to say to the viewers before you sign off?
Well, first, thank you for having me. These matches were an absolute blast to watch, and commentating them was incredible. I feel pretty much the exact same way as Angel. Love this community. Would love to see more people getting involved. I remember when this tournament was first getting started, being absolutely awed by the amount of new faces that were so eager to participate. It was an incredible time to be in the community, and I'm glad that we got so many people into this game, and I encourage each and every one of them to continue to go out, play ladder, play tournaments, especially if we do Team League. Do Team League. That is easily the best format we have to offer. And also, I encourage other people to join in on the conversations that we have in general. One, because I need more people to accommodate my mad ramblings about Black Panther. And two, just because you can learn so much by talking with people. Like, a lot of my knowledge comes from just talking with players like you, John, or Chad, or just other people about random matchups in general, and just spitballing ideas off of each other.
Mm-hmm. That's how it works, just get involved is the biggest thing. Just get involved in any which way. Go chat on the Discord, play some games, jump in on ladder, anything and everything. Watch the streams, watch the YouTube channels, all this stuff. Listen to the podcasts. There's just so much going on about this game, and it's all just amazing. So just get involved, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So, yep, well said, Alex. And once again, thank you for joining in on commentary. It's been a pleasure, man. And then Jeremy, last but not least, anything you have to say to the viewers before you sign off?
Well, it's really exciting for me to see a nice aggressive, two pretty aggressive games, because anyone that knows that that's really how I like to play, often to my detriment. But it is really fun to see that. Once again, thanks to Restoration for supporting this competitive scene so much. We wouldn't be able to make the game be this, this scene be this successful without their support, and them realizing the value that this competitive scene has for them is amazing. The growth that we have seen on the competitive scene, particularly internationally. I know those early tournaments were largely U.S. based, with a couple of random Singaporeans and stuff in there, but we have so many international players in there. And they may be paying the big money to mail a trophy overseas to somebody, depending on how things go tomorrow. So, it's really excited to see that. And I urge everyone on here that's interested in it to go take a look at what all Unmatched offerings are out there. We've got a lot of great sets. We've got a new set coming out here in just a couple months that not only brings in a new play style, but is also going to have 4 really great fighters in it. So, encourage everyone to do that, because it's just a really great game from a really great company.
Yeah, I will echo that 100%. And that new set you mentioned, that is Unmatched Tales to Amaze. It's Unmatched Adventures, that new line of cooperative Unmatched play that you and 3 other friends can get together and go against essentially an AI, artificial intelligence. It's kind of like, the PC, whatever. It's a really fun design where you draw cards off of like the villain decks, and you're all up against the big villain and their minions. And the big villains are the Martian invaders and the Mothman. So really cool new cooperative play, but you can also use those new fighters, which are Golden Bat, Annie Christmas, Jill Trent, and Nikola Tesla. So some really unique fighters there. But you can use them in the standalone game, or you can bring in other fighters like we saw today with Achilles and Bigfoot and Winter Soldier. You could bring them in for the cooperative play as well. And you can also take those Tales to Amaze fighters outside of the cooperative play and use them in competitive 1v1s, just like any other fighter. So everything is mix and match. It's a very modular game. So yeah, highly recommend getting Tales to Amaze when it comes out. It's going to be one of the best sets we've ever seen, hands down. And I think almost everybody shares that same sentiment. So really, really highly anticipated set. Definitely check it out when it comes out. And I also want to echo, Jeremy, what you said about the global reach of the scene. It's just been incredible to see the growth that this community has had, especially to players from all over the world. I mean, these tournaments are huge. This is like the World Cup of Unmatched. You have the best of the best from all over the globe, all countries competing in these events to really prove who is truly unmatched. And so just the global reach of these tournaments has been amazing, and to see it grow more and more as time goes on is just really, really cool to see, and I can't wait to see where it takes us in the future. But it's been an incredible journey so far. And Jeremy, again, I want to just thank you for being on commentary with me. It's always a pleasure. And I know you have some Twitch and YouTube channels of your own, so go ahead and give those a shout out while we have you on air.
Okay, yeah, my YouTube channel is To The Tabletop with an exclamation point. You can find a lot of just kind of fighter reviews and just other Unmatched related content. I have started branching out a little bit and doing a few other games in there as well, but mainly Unmatched. The Twitch is PoindexterG because there's some other PoindexterG out there, and I don't know who that is, but you'll see the games that I play on there. I don't stream as many matches for other people because Darkblade has kind of taken over doing a lot of that, and he is really amazing at that. But yeah, I still do get games on there. So yeah, definitely check those out.
Definitely check out Jeremy's channels. He makes great content. And you can find the links should be posted in the Twitch chat there for you guys. But yeah, look him up, definitely. Great content. It's always nice to have other content creators for Unmatched, just publicizing this game to other people so we can help the whole scene grow and just give people content that we all love. So thank you for that, Jeremy, and thanks again for being on commentary. You all have been amazing commentators, so I'm glad to have you all. Hope to have you again in the future. But that's going to wrap it up here. So again, my name is John, otherwise known as ZeroSkater12. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch as well. YouTube.com/ZeroSkater12, and same thing, Twitch.tv/ZeroSkater12. You can find my links hopefully in the Twitch chat as well. But check me out. I put out some Unmatched content. Mainly right now is Matchup of the Month. It's an ongoing series where I take votes from my Patreon members. So if you want to subscribe to me on Patreon, you can cast your votes. Thank you, Jeremy. I know you are one of the patrons that continuously supporting me with that, so I really appreciate it. And, that lets you cast your votes so that maybe you can see your matchup featured in one of my videos. So Matchup of the Month has been a very successful series, and I think people enjoy it a lot, so I'm looking to continue up with that. And I do put out other videos like tier lists and strategy content and, set reviews and stuff like that. It's been a little bit more scarce lately because I recently started up school, so I haven't had as much free time. But I'm definitely not quitting it. I'm still putting out the content, and so check me out on YouTube. And when I go live on Twitch as well, if you follow and put on your notifications, you can see when I go live for Twitch. I've been streaming all of my tournament matches up to this point, so if you've missed any of them and you want to catch up, you can go on my Twitch channel and check out. I have a playlist for Summer of Legends 2023. You can see all my pools and bracket matches up to this point. But yeah, go check me out. You can follow me on Twitter as well, or X, whatever you want to call it. Same thing, ZeroSkater12, or subscribe to me on Patreon, all that good stuff. But yeah, that's going to be it for Summer of Legends' first semifinal versus Phantom versus mplaza. So again, don't go anywhere too far. Come back at 1 p.m. Central, and we will have my match versus TDC Jason. And thank you all for watching this one. It's been a blast, and hope to see you all in just a little bit.